And I think we are live. Can we get some ones in the chat if you can hear us, everybody? Hello. Oh my God. Wow. All right. Coming out with the fancy particles. Boomered me for 10 minutes, not knowing how to join a Discord server, and here he is with all these server effects. Okay, yeah, they can hear us. Awesome.
Oh, man.
Hi, everybody.
Awesome.
I'm here with JJ McCullough from Canada. That's a country, for those of you who don't know, that is above
hmm
us.
For now.
For for now. Oh, we'll get into it. All right.
Of
Hi. Thanks so much for coming onto the show. Despite the
course.
50-minute boomer tirade where you complained about technology and how none of it works, we still made it, and we're here, and we can see and hear both of us, and I'm happy that it worked out. So
Yes.
I have gotten a lot of comments. Apparently, this happens every time I chat with everyone, where they're just like, "You're talking to that guy," and that just keeps happening. So I'd like
Okay.
you, if you could, explain who you are, what your politics are. Just
Hmm.
in like I don't know, like a little elevator pitch. You're selling me as the JJ McCullough experience.
Okay. So I am JJ McCullough. I am a YouTuber. I've been doing YouTube for about 10 years. I'm pretty close to 1 million subs. So I feel like I'm a
Oh yeah,
relatively,
link in
you
the
know,
description, guys. Go push them over the edge. Get them to 1 million. We like to
no, it's
we
just
like
like
to help out the smaller creators here, just so you know.
well,
Small.
is 1 million big? I don't know. It feels like increasing like 1 million subs is like a mid-sized YouTuber these days, if anything. But whatever. So I've been doing YouTube for a while. I make a video every week. I make videos about sort of cultural topics, as you can maybe tell from my backdrop of crazy nonsense.
Yeah.
I sometimes make I make a lot of videos that are sort of engaging with the topic of sort of like what is American culture, American middle class culture is something I'm very interested in. My background is in political commentary. I used to be a political TV talking head pundit man for many years, and I used to be a columnist for the Washington Post as well, and some other publications too.
And I bet everyone's
So I've
wondering,
been very
is the mustache coming back? Your TV mustache?
is the mustache coming back?
Yeah.
Oh, I go back. Longtime viewers know that this is one of the gimmicks of my channel is that I change my hair a lot and I change my facial hair a lot. So
Okay.
it's like about like maybe half my videos have a mustache, maybe half of them don't. Sometimes I have long hair, sometimes I have short hair. It's kind of all over the place.
Right on.
So, but yeah, but no, I've been doing like my channel is not a political channel. I occasionally do videos that kind of update my viewers on the political situation in Canada because I feel like that's something sort of novel that I can do as a Canadian. I'm very literate and very interested in Canadian politics in a way that, frankly, a lot of Canadians on YouTube are not. So I feel like that's something that I can offer my viewers. I try to be objective when I talk about politics, but yeah, I do have my own perspective. For most of my sort of professional life, I've been associated with, I would say, like conservative political commentary. When I did television, I would be sort of like a token conservative talking head type of
And clear
person.
this up for my audience
Um,
too, because you don't mean American conservative. This is Canadian conservative. It's a very
well,
different thing, right?
but it's changed. Like, I'm 40 years old, right? So like I've seen the political winds and sort of things evolve over time. There was a time in which sort of
Oh,
Canadian conservatism and American
you cut out. Can
conservatism.
you still hear me?
I cut out. I can
Or
still
can
hear
I
you.
not
Can you
hear
hear
you?
me?
Uh-oh.
Hmm?
Hold on. We're
Oh,
boomer mode. Oh, you're back.
hold on.
No, you're back.
I'm back.
You're
I'm
back. Go
back.
ahead. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if you
All right.
hit mute or
All
something.
right. No, no. Like there was definitely like sort of Canadian conservatism and American conservatism sort of are fruits of the same tree, right? Like there was, a ideological movement that arose in sort of the aftermath of the Second World War, trying to make conservatism into a sort of like coherent philosophy, small government, low taxes, strong national defense, sort of traditional kind of Christian morality and all of that. And like the Canadian conservative movement is just as much an extension of that sort of intellectual tradition as the American conservative tradition is. But obviously, like, things have changed a lot. And, I've changed as a person, and you sort of, if you live long enough, you see ideas tested and certain ideas fail and certain ideas succeed, and that sort of makes you kind of like pragmatic in sort of ways. I definitely feel like I've become more moderate and more pragmatic as I've gotten older. But more than anything else, like, in the era of Trump, conservatism has become a very incoherent thing. It has become much more sort of nakedly reactionary, much more sort of cult of personality, cult of loyalty to one erratic man. As you can probably tell, I don't sympathize or see any of myself or any of my own agenda in the Trump agenda, in the MAGA agenda. So, in the kind of American context, the my favorite sort of crew is the Bulwark people. Did you ever tune
Oh
into them?
man. That sounds very familiar, and I feel stupid for not knowing what you're talking about. But please enlighten me.
So the Bulwark people are really cool. I was actually just on their podcast, a new episode this morning.
Oh, okay.
People can go and watch if they want to hear me yapping about the tariffs and all that.
Yeah.
But like the Bulwark is like a cool American YouTube channel, podcasting network, and all the rest of it. That is basically like former Republicans who have become so repulsed by what their former party has become under Trump that they now sort of self-identify as Democrats. And they're very interesting because I find that their commentary is just very refreshing and sort of non-tendentious, because since they come from a kind of conservative background, a kind of like more sort of traditional sort of Reaganite kind of conservative background, they sort of have principles that they stick to, and they're not like, sort of traditional sort of progressive principles. But at the same time, they hate Trump and they want everybody to vote for the Democrats and they want Trump to be out of power and, they don't
Would you
want the
say they
Democrats
align
to
with
control,
like?
or they don't want.
Would you say they align with like the Lincoln Project kind of people? They're like, never
Yeah, yeah,
Trumper Republican kind of like, hey, this
yeah,
guy sucks,
yeah.
but we're still conservative, maybe.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, this is the same question that Destiny asked me when I was on
Oh, okay.
his podcast a while ago. No, it's like for some reason, like the Lincoln Project, even though the Lincoln Project is not very consequential or influential these days, is much more sort of front of mind
That's
in
the
the
American,
imaginations of,
yeah, because we see
of
that all the
people
time
of
as
the
like the last bastion, whereas everyone else has kind of thrown their weight in with Trump. Every single 2016 Never Trumper, like Rubio, Chris Christie, Ted Cruz, Ben
yeah,
Shapiro, Matt Walsh, they're all Trump trained now. So like the Lincoln Project,
yeah,
it doesn't have a face. It's just, hey, we're always going to shit on Trump, and so we're kind of like trying to be like,
yeah.
okay, well, there's someone, at least there's someone, but I don't know, that could be run by Democrats. I haven't looked into it. Like,
But I mean, I would just say that like as far as like where never Trumpers are now, I would say the Bulwark is much more representative
okay,
of that faction of American politics than the Lincoln Project, which I think is a much smaller thing and is kind of like a they're the Lincoln Project people and the Bulwark people are like allies, like they're close together.
okay, I
But
would
like
figure,
my,
yeah,
my basic philosophy is that like I do, I like, I guess where I come at it now is like I'm loyal to the kind of the liberal order, right? What William Buckley used to call like the American system, right? Like I
okay.
believe in the Constitution, I believe in, free markets. I believe in the defense of liberal values, classical liberal values of the way, they would have been understood by men like Buckley or Eisenhower or
Yeah, but not
whatever.
not in like
Like
a
a certain
Dave
sense,
Rubin kind of way where you're a classical liberal insofar as you vote for Trump and you take Russian money and
no.
spout their points. Like literally textbook like I want personal freedoms, that sort of stuff. Maybe smaller government, would you
Yeah,
say? Or
well, I mean, to a point, right? But it's like the thing is, like, I just try not to think of myself in these ideological terms. Like, I try
yeah,
to think just be more pragmatically, right? It's like you can look at, like, say, what Trump is doing right now in the White House and, firing people willy-nilly and just like acting erratically. And it's like, is that like the small government agenda winning? It's like, that's not what I want to
it's
see
getting
happen. Like,
smaller.
that's,
It's
I
shrinking.
guess it is.
Yeah, for
But it's
every
like, well, what
for
is the motive? And is this being done coherently? Is this being
yeah.
done like with good motives, or is this just being done in a kind of like spirit of vindictiveness because like I hate bureaucrats because like I see them as part of like the left tribe and they have to be sort of beaten down for their own sake, and like this is, I mean, like that's the thing that I think has really sort of taken over the right in America, is a kind of like spirit of vindictiveness above
Oh
everything
yeah,
else, right? And
the
that's
own the libs vibes. It's not about
yeah,
we're winning because I feel good because my life is improving. It's, oh, you're suffering and I love that. It feels good to watch
yeah,
the people I hate lose. And there's so much of their
yeah,
politics is based on that because their lives don't change on the day to day. So yeah,
yeah,
that's it's awful because it's like you're not, you don't care about anything. You're just in this to watch others suffer, and like you could put so much, all this passion, these accounts like this libs of TikTok, it's like you're not advocating for things, you're just shitting
yeah,
on people, and you could use that
yeah.
energy for good things even if I don't agree with it. It's very frustrating to watch for sure. But then
No, and
do you feel like you're a little no, I mean, again, you're Canadian, so this is a little different. But like, if you contextualize yourself in American politics, which you have been a little bit here,
Yeah.
politically homeless, because yeah, you got these bulwark people. I've never heard of them, and that doesn't mean they're not big. They're very big. But like, what like politicians would you like even like align yourself with if you had to vote in the American system? Like, where does that even go? Like, how would a never Trump Republican go forward from here?
Well, because it sort of like depends on what you view as being the stakes of the current sort of political moment, right? Like it seems to me that the train has long sailed on the point where American elections are being decided on sort of like heady questions of public policy, right?
Yeah, we're
It's sort of
past.
like, do we want this erratic madman in the Oval Office or not? Do we want him and his like crazy cast of, groypers and, weirdos to be making public policy, or do we want, a sane, moderate Democrat who, you might not agree with on 100% of all issues, but geez Louise, like at this point, I just feel like that's not really the conversation that we're having. And I feel like that's how most
Yeah.
principled sort of never Trump Republicans think now, is that they're kind of thinking like, the idea that Kamala Harris would be disqualified from the presidency because, like maybe her policy on like, I don't know,
Israel
environmental
or environment,
regulation is a
yeah.
few steps to the left of what I would prefer, right? Like no, like that's just such a small-minded way of thinking about politics at a time when the stakes are as high as they are. If you believe in the preservation of like what I was saying before, like the kind of the liberal American system, if you believe in the preservation of the Constitution, elections whose results are respected, a separation of powers between the different branches of government, an open sort of trade-based economic order as opposed to like vindictive tariffs against our closest allies, right? Like all of these kinds of things, like these are what Trump is opposed to. And the stakes are very existential in that way. And that's why I just don't have time for conservatives who act like Trump is basically a normal Republican with maybe a little kind of hard edge. And then
Yeah.
so like that, therefore, like when you look at the options between Kamala Harris and Trump, that this is somehow like this great, like, oh, very difficult choice. And oh, my principles are so on the line here, right? It's
Yeah.
like I feel like the principles of respecting the American system and the Constitution and the liberal order that America has grown so prosperous and successful as a country under, like if you can't err on the side of conserving that, then I don't know what kind of conservative you are.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with that because like the way I see it, there's like maybe two or three groups of Republicans. So you've got the like, I'm full on Trump, like I love owning the libs, I love whatever he has to say, cult of personality people. Then you have like a little to the left of that, which is all the never Trumpers who said, you know what, screw it, I don't care, this guy's getting me wins, so I will throw
Mm.
the entire American system under the bus if it means that I get richer, if my abortion policy gets passed. And then you have the third group, which is like the hey, wait a minute, guys, like this guy tried to overturn the election. This guy's trying to like, subvert the Constitution. Like, I don't care that he's going to give me a couple social wins. Like, this is not okay. We have
Yeah.
to, like reject this wholeheartedly. But unfortunately, I don't think there's like a place for that right now because you've got
No.
like the Dick Cheney, Liz Cheney like endorsements, and everyone on the left is like, wait, these guys did the Iraq War, fuck them. And everyone on the right is like, well, you're not voting for Trump, we're going to vote you out. So where do you even go at
Yeah.
that point? It sucks because this is the kind of like I would say you and I probably agree. Probably, I don't know, at least on a majority of policy things, insofar as like, socially, like how should things go, economically, we'd probably start to differ. But like the conversations you and I would have that would be disagreements would be like what I would imagine the two-party system to be versus now it's you and me are 100% need to be aligned because we're fighting against the existential threat of this person is consolidating all of the power into the executive branch and destroying the entire American system. So
Yeah.
it's just so fucked. Like I don't even know how we like get
It
past
is.
that because like I want to disagree with you more. I want to have more fights. I want to like have a back and forth. But it's like, why would I waste my time arguing about these little nitty gritty things when this guy's over here just blowing up like the building that we're arguing in? Like
Well, that's exactly what I feel, right? And like this, but this is like the problem, right? Is that there's a lot of sort of like right wingers who will accuse you of having Trump derangement syndrome and all this, like if you're so fixated on Trump. But it's like to me, it's like there's just nothing else that's worth talking about than Trump and this administration and this movement that he has the head of,
yeah,
right? Like that's the moment that we find ourselves in, right? Like I've lived long enough to realize that there are different political moments that come and go. Sometimes you're in a relatively sane one in which you can have these kind of high-minded sort of policy debates about how high the corporate tax rate should be or whatever. And
Yeah.
then sometimes you're in a more existential political moment in which, the survival of the system is on the line. And it's like,
Yeah.
I'm sorry that some people would rather pretend like they're living in a more sort of tranquil era of politics in which they can just be having, policy conversations or sort of like grand abstract sort of philosophical debates about, well, what is the ideal role of the state in society? Like it's like that's the time for that is not now, right? I hope
Yeah.
it is the time for that in the future. God willing, it will be someday. We can go back to a politics of tranquility and good
Hmm.
faith, conversations and debates about that kind of stuff.
I used to
But that's
make
just not where
videos
we
about
are.
like how like not used to. I mean, this is literally like a year or two ago. I'd make videos like, "Oh God, the left wing. Like, we need to check ourselves here. Like, this is being silly." And now that this is happening, I'm like, I'm never gonna criticize. The left can be the craziest they ever can be. I don't give a shit anymore. Like, it's not worth my time to like crabs in a bucket drag my fellow Democrats or lefties down when like it's just so much worse right now. Yeah, you're right. It's just not worth it. Um,
Well, it is where, but I would say I would disagree with you in the sense that I do think it is bad if the left is behaving in such a way that
oh, that
it
alienates
makes,
people. Sure, yeah. If it does
yeah,
hurt the
yeah. And I
cause,
think, yeah, that's a problem, right? And because and I do think that is something that a certain type of left winger is dangerously aloof about, right?
hmm.
Like especially these days when we think about like what is causing Democrats to lose. There's a lot of poll data that suggests that one of the reasons why Democrats are losing is because they're associated with a kind of far left kind of culture that exists in America.
But
The far left can say all they
is
want that, the Democrats are not actually
yeah.
of that culture, which is true. But nevertheless, the perception exists. And,
It
if people
does,
are
but the
voting,
Republicans are the ones who
yeah,
paint that perception, right? He does the whole
yeah,
Comrade Kamala, and that's all you have to do is suddenly
yeah,
you're
yeah,
lumped in, right? Like, she's rejected that wholeheartedly. She never even spoke on
yes,
like the trans issues, on and almost anything progressive, and like I said, like aligned with like the Cheneys. So what are
yeah,
the Democrats supposed to do if the Republicans are the ones driving the narrative of, oh, you guys are the far left, you guys are the crazy radicals, and they're not even close? Does it even
yeah.
matter that they're pushing themselves away from that? Like, what are they supposed to do going forward? Because I feel
Yeah,
that
I
way
don't
right
know.
now.
It's tough. Like this is one of the great sort of challenges of American politics in the moment because the Democrats, as I think, the party that is standing up for the American system, the principal party, they can't kind of like they're in this really difficult spot where they can't seem to win either way, right? Because if they do reach out to Republicans, then like the left wing sort of side of America sort of goes after them. It's like you
Yeah.
sellouts, why should I vote for? What reason have you given me to vote for you lately?
Yeah, you
Right?
think we
But then
purity
if
test
they
our own? You go ahead and bring a Republican into our party, and we'll tear them apart. So
Exactly. But then at the same time, if they actually do try to court the left wing, well, then that alienates these kind of squishy middle voters who are like, well, I was ready to vote for Democrats, but then, Kamala Harris was on the same stage as a Palestinian, and that's
mhm.
where I draw the line, right? Like
A
there
lot of
becomes like
people
there's these,
rejected my suggestions because I said like I kind of liked Bernie Sanders, and they were like so opposed, like to the word socialist. It was just poison in their brain. Like I couldn't even get through to them, and these were like the pretty liberal libs, like like not like
yeah,
moderates, not center, like people that like in Berkeley were like, oh, Bernie Sanders, I don't know if he endorses them, maybe not anymore. And so yeah, like it's too nuanced. Like I don't know, like
it is.
how do we pick a left Trump that everyone could just be like, yeah, that guy, like whatever. He embodies everything I think he says. It doesn't matter what he says. He's saying what I think he says. I'm projecting my views onto him. Like maybe we need something
Yeah.
like that. But then
I think that's I think it's sad to say I think that might be all it is, right? Like I think that we're kind of getting into a kind of a pretty dopey age of politics, frankly, where there's just like the vibes just kind of triumph over everything else, right? Like we know from polling data as well that a lot of people just did that with Trump. Like they just projected all sorts of opinions onto him. Like they just kind of came up with an ideal candidate in their imagination,
Mhm.
and then they decided that Trump matched that profile in some way, even though regardless of what he actually said or promised to do. And then they voted on that basis because they just kind of dug his vibe on some level. Like I don't get that appeal. They tell me Trump is charismatic. I do not see it, but clearly some people do. And it's likewise. Like I looked at Kamala Harris, I thought, oh, she's a like fine politician. Yeah, sure, maybe she talks in a sort of politician-y kind of way, but she just seems ordinary. Like it's easy to imagine her being president of the United States. But some people, they look at her and it's like, oh, so cringe, so awful. Like what a word salad babbling, crazy bitch she is. Like,
Yeah.
it's just like you can't really sort of control people's perceptions in that way. And like people make up their minds. Like, I mean, I think about this in like Canadian politics. Like there's certain politicians that I thought were fine on either the right or the left, but then some people just have this like powerful revulsion to. And then so you just kind of like wonder, is that ultimately all that matters? Like if the Democrats just kind of like ran a kind of like handsome, outgoing, charismatic white guy,
Yeah, who just
would
never
would that
admitted
be all?
wrongdoing and said yes to everyone. He just adapted whatever the
Well,
last thing he said. Like, so someone's like, "You're this, right?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm that." And then they're like, "Hey, you're gonna do this." "Yeah, I'm gonna do that." And just roll with it. Like, maybe, but like, isn't that a downward spiral where it just turns into this, idiocracy popularity contest? Like, do we submit to that if it means that's the only way we could win? Like, I want to say yes, but like that's like, it's almost worse. Like, I'd rather have that juxtaposition and like maybe try to bring people back than just be like, all right, we're doubling down. Like, Dwayne the Rock Johnson, you're up. It's your turn. Like WWE, like presidential debate.
well, because the thing is, I do think that we had a bit of a test of this with the Biden administration, right? Like, the Biden administration, people can like him or hate him as a man, but that government did introduce a lot of very targeted policy
Yeah.
that was designed to appease what the American voters claimed was their biggest anxieties and
Yeah.
concerns. There
Mm-hmm.
was a lot of spending, there was a lot of investment, there was a lot of infrastructure stuff. The government tried to address some of these things, and the Biden administration got zero credit for any of its policy wins,
I don't think
right?
they
It's just
talked
like,
about them enough. I really don't think they did, because
well,
once people's like, when I hear
okay,
pundits talk about them, I'm like, oh shit, like, yeah, Chips
yeah,
Act, Inflation Reduction, like, look at all this stuff we did, look at all these credits we got,
yes,
look how good this is. But like, I never heard that from them. Like, they tried to like kind of like, I think they have these focus groups full of people like, oh, you got to talk about the unemployment, or you got to talk about like this thing. But like, I swear to God, if Kamala Harris just like beat tariffs into our head for 4 months, like, hey, the other guy, he wants to raise all your prices, he wants to do that,
yeah.
like, just say that. And like, everyone will be like, wait, he said tariffs, that's what a tariff is. Like, I think if you just hammered that in, like, that would have changed the narrative so much. But the problem is, like, they've got this weird like 3 month lag where it's like, well, we got this group of like 10 Midwestern voters that say they want to hear you talk about this thing, and then they project that to 400 million people, and like no one gives a shit. And so you can pass this great legislation, no one knows about any of it. And I don't know if that's a failure of messaging, or just people are neglectful, but like, I really do think it's on the Democrats to like really be hammering this shit into our brain. But yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair.
Well, and I want to add too is like, I think what we do have the closest to like the wow, I felt for a second here in two of these moments that we were invigorated. The first was when Kamala replaced Biden, and for a second, every Democrat I knew was like, "Holy shit, we've got a chance! This person's not dying. She's full of energy." They're calling the Republicans weird, because like, that's how I feel. So call out their bullshit. Don't be like, "Oh, we disagree, but we have a beer at the end of the day in the Senate." It's like, no, fuck this. This is fucking insane. Call it insane. This is fucking crazy. And the only person that's doing that now still, I think, is like AOC. Like, it's really like speaking to the people who are like, this is insane, we need to talk about this. Meanwhile, Chuck Schumer is like, whatever, let's let him hang himself by their own petard, they'll just do crazy stuff. It's like, no, push back, do something. You're elected. I elected you. Do something. And they're just kind of like hanging out. I do think that you do need that like kind of energy, that youthfulness, and maybe that like a willingness to just be like, not play dirty necessarily, like I'm gonna cheat and subvert the election, but like play dirty. Hey, this is fucking bullshit. I'm going to call it bullshit, because that's what Trump's been doing for 10 years. And I like, what's the classic tweet, which is Democrats for the past 10 years have been pulling their hair out saying, but a dog can't play basketball. Meanwhile, a dog dunks on them over and over and over again. It's like, it doesn't matter what the rules are. Like, this is the game now, and you're not playing it.
No, I feel like I broadly agree with what you sort of said. Like, communication is key, marketing is key. I mean, as much as we kind of like want, and I think probably there was a degree. I mean, I'm sure that the Biden people, the Kamala people would sort of say we were hammering all of these great things that we did, but that's the results, I guess, speak for themselves in terms of how effective those messages were in getting out.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm thinking right now, like, I'm thinking, because here in Canada we're going to have an election soon in the next couple of months. And I look at like the fellow who's running for prime minister for the Conservative Party, and he is like so relentless in his messaging, right? Almost to the point of like it having a sort of childlike simplicity to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like he's going after the incumbent, after Trudeau's party,
Mm-hmm.
for introducing the carbon tax, right? And so like there's a carbon tax, you know, on some level it doesn't even matter what the carbon tax is, but he just talks all the time, every single time he does the carbon tax. He all of his little podiums that he stands on always say "axe the tax," and he gives all of the politicians nicknames. You know, there's Carbon Tax Carney and Carbon Tax Christia, and
This
just
is
like
very
everybody's
Trump-esque. All right. Yeah.
it is, but
Yeah.
it's like a relentless message, right? And so now it's so drilled into your brain through endless repetition that you think Liberal Party, you think, oh, it's the party of the carbon tax, right?
Yeah.
Like it's so incessant. And I think that like I agree with you. Like I think that the weird thing, like that was inspiring for a reason. Like that if they could have just stuck with that and just like people think Republican, people think weird. And you know, it would be a little cringe. And like some of the holier than thou leftists, I'm sure would be bothered by it because they'd sort of say like, oh, this is just like this is superficial and this is just like pandering to these like, you know, resist lib wine moms who just want their slogans and all this kind of stuff. But I think it would work, right? And that's why like I was my low point in the 2024 election was the debate between Governor Walz, who came up with the weird thing, and then JD Vance, who was like the epitome of like weird Republican.
They
And
muzzled him.
instead
I
of like
swear to
going,
God, they muzzled him. They
yeah,
muzzled him for like a couple. They had him say weird, and then they're like, "No, oh, you're being a little mean, Tim. Don't do that." And
yeah,
then in that debate, all he
yeah,
did was capitulate. Just like, "Oh, you know what,
yeah,
JD? That was a good point. Like, shut. No,
yeah, yeah,
stop
no,
it right now." That was
no,
so fucking frustrating. I agree completely. That
it
was
was.
almost as bad as Joe Biden like having a brain hemorrhage on stage, which caused him to drop out. Like almost that bad. Which
Yes.
is just go up there and just say, "Hey, look, you're the next Hitler, and you're gonna be a fascist." But you know what? You make some good points, and maybe we agree on more. Like,
Yeah,
what are you talking about? This is the existential vote of our lifetime, and you're just sitting there, just kind
yeah.
of laying down like a dog. That was super frustrating. Yes, if that's
Oh,
what you
that
meant.
the good. No, I did mean that exactly, right? And it's like the one moment where I thought there would be a good opportunity as well was that, you know, when he confronted him, it's like, you know, Senator Vance, did Trump lose the election? Like, yes or no? And then Vance is like his whole artifice, right? Because this is Vance's whole artifice is that I'm like the smartest guy in the world and like I have an answer for everything and I speak the truth and I'm blunt and honest and I tell what people don't want to hear and this kind of
Yeah.
thing. And in that moment, the whole artifice sort of collapsed around him. And like Walls really should have, I mean,
Make him
yeah,
answer.
just should
Yeah,
have
say
drilled
make
in
him
his
answer
heart.
that question. This is like
Yeah,
this because he's like,
yeah,
oh, that's a damning answer. It's like, okay, good soundbite, but like this is disqualifying from being an
yeah,
elected official. You need to just make him answer this. Like just like and they don't do that. And the media is now scared because of the like whole retaliatory you talked about TDS, like is it worth
yeah,
talking about anything else when this is the biggest thing happening? In the same way, like, can you say I have stabbing derangement syndrome when someone's stabbing me to death? Like, no, like I'm gonna talk about the guy stabbing me to death. But the
yeah,
problem is and it sucks because these liberal wine moms have the resist libs have been 100% vindicated, especially in the past few weeks. But back in 2016 2015 when Trump was doing this kind of, you know, fashy rhetoric, but like it seemed a little toothless, and his administration in the first 4 years proved like, yeah, it was bad, but not nearly as bad as people were like saying it was going to be. Like, oh, this is apocalyptic, nuclear war is going to happen, the country won't exist. That 4 years worth of that ended up with us being like, okay, well, now every time I hear you criticize Donald Trump, I think you're being, you know, reactionary, hyperbolic. Like, you're not really giving a substantive critique. You're just repeating SNL talking points or something silly. But
yeah,
now I legitimately think that we might not be a hegemonic power in the next 3 years because of how much they're
yeah,
fucking up. Like, it's literally as bad as they thought it would be back in 2015 because they have all the same ideas, but with all of the acumen to do it. And no one takes it seriously because it's like, well, you complained the same way back then. So like we almost kind of, you know, boy who cried wolf this to ourselves by letting it happen. But at the same time, they were right. They were 100% right the entire time. Everything they
yeah,
warned us about. It's just because everyone can't do the marshmallow test. It's, well, you know, he didn't, you know, be a fascist dictator in 2017 right away. So like I guess it just will never happen. And then I'll just ignore everything you say for the next 5 years, even though it's completely being vindicated. It's all happening before our very eyes. So I apologize to the resist
it's
libs.
just it's just like for me though, it's just like the thing was 2020, right? Like the thing was January 6th, and it's like how do you come back from that? Like that's what makes his reelection like just so baffling on some level. Because
Yeah.
it's like that was just the relentless lying about having lost the election, and then, January 6th itself, and then the constant apologia for the January 6th people. Of course now it's taken reached a grotesque height where now these people are not merely, just being pardoned, but are actually like the greatest heroes in American history that need to
Oh
be
my
up on the
God.
stage with
And, and
no,
the
that's like
cognitive dissonance I can't even get behind too, because now we're just like lib circle jerking, even though you're conservative. But I don't understand how we can hold the same opinions. I mean, I understand, don't get me wrong, but it's so frustrating watching them be like, it's not a big deal, they were just walking through, it's nothing, they should all be pardoned. But at the same time, we can watch these people on video just like beating cops heads in with like bricks
yes.
and stuff, and it's like, okay, like should these people be pardoned? And the answer is yes, but like, okay, well, which is it? Like, was it a nothing burger
Yeah.
or was it something? Like, do they like, it's so frustrating. And the fact that like we just kind of collectively forgot about it, which is like, I guess it's not a big deal, makes me want to explode. Like I just like
Well,
I
but it gets to what we're talking about though, right? Because it's like, and this is why we feel like we're living in such a sort of nightmarish Kafka-esque dystopia, is because you want like all of politics, all of democracy is based on the principle that voters are rational and voters hold politicians accountable, right? And that there is some sense of cause and effect that governs our democratic existence, right? And so when
yeah.
you start getting into the world where like just there is no clear law of cause and effect, like policy doesn't seem to matter, like victories in the, legislation don't seem to matter. Sort of like truly abhorrent acts on the part of the candidate don't seem to matter, right? Like that's then when you get into this world that we're talking about before, right? Where people just kind of like hallucinate a political reality and then vote on the basis of that, rather than just kind of like observing the facts in front of them and then doing the work to reach a, rational conclusion based on what they actually see rather
Yeah.
than just what they wish to be the case, right?
And I hope that's not the case, but it sounds like you're right that like we just kind of have to embrace that and be like, all right, like who we got to vibe better, we got to, we got to like,
Yeah,
we got to
yeah.
do more bad nicknames, we got to have more insults. Like I'm
I
I
think
can
so,
do it.
right?
I'll play the game, but man, does that suck. Man, do I not want to do that.
Well,
Man, like, do I not want to watch us degrade our democracy into this stupid fucking celebrity death match? But like, it seems like that's just what's gonna happen. Um, oh well. That's
I
how
mean,
you.
it
That's
is,
how we
but
get the
like the
nukes
thing,
back.
what I would say though, as sort of someone who is not like a dogmatic sort of lefty, is that I do think that the lefties have to sort of disavow themselves of this fantasy that if they can just get like the perfect socialist who is like perfectly ideological and right, which is to say left on every single issue in this completely orthodox way, then somehow like the latent desire that all beats in the breast of every American for like a true sort of socialist government will be activated, and then that will get
Yeah.
the Republicans out, and then we'll have everything. No, I'm afraid that like things might have to be a bit shallower than that, and that
Yeah.
things like marketing and slogans and vibes and the attractiveness and charisma of the candidate and all of these kind of things are ultimately what are going to matter more. And I think that if you do view sort of like the American system as being on the line, you do have to take a bit of water in your wine and put up with a politics that maybe strikes you as you know insufficiently ideological or a little cringe or a little shallow.
Yeah,
But
like
if
how
that's what
much
it
is my
takes.
my morals and my ethics and my standards worth it to me when I'm being stepped on by a boot? I'm like, all right, fuck it.
Hmm,
Like I gotta do what I gotta do. Because
yes.
right now, like I am someone who really does rail against the whole like TDS. Like I have a whole video on like the late night talk shows and how they just blew up every single dumb little Trump nothing burger into like the biggest story ever for every week. But these past 2 weeks have like legitimately made me scared of like, oh my god, like this is really, really, really bad. Like not just like,
Hmm,
oh, like haha, like alarmist. Like I'm not even watching the liberal news. It's not like they're telling me what to think. I'm just reading like objectively what is being done and freaking the fuck out. Like holy shit, is this
hmm,
really where we are? But on that note, as a sequitur, I guess you've
yes.
already talked about tariffs today, so not to hammer them in, but like, what are
No,
what are
it's
your
fine.
thoughts on the tariffs? Because it looks like we've backed down. My understanding is the capitulations made by both Mexico and Canada are things they promised back in December. So like, it's nothing new. But
Yeah,
what are your takes on
yeah.
that? Because I'm a little less
Well, I
informed,
mean,
especially of
yeah.
Canadian politics.
I mean, it's such a preposterous situation because it's just such an unprovoked economic attack on Canada for no clear reason at all. Trump has given, I think, no fewer than like a dozen justifications,
Yeah.
some of which are like contradictory and, you know, all the rest of it, right? Like sometimes he says like, you know, this is being done as a prelude to like annexing Canada and Canada should be the 51st state.
Yeah.
And then sometimes he says, you know, Canada has nothing we need. So it's just kind of like it's like an anti-trade as an end unto itself. Like
Yeah,
trade is
and
just inherently
you can
bad,
watch it in
you
real
know?
time. You can watch the the Trump what do you even call them, the sycophants, like the Charlie Kirks, being like, "This is great. We're doing this trade war because Canada is unfair to us, and we're going to make money off of this, and this is good for our economy." And then as soon as Canada capitulates and says, "Oh hey, we're putting people at the border to stop the fentanyl," it's like, this was the plan all along. It had nothing to do with the economy. It was actually a bargaining tactic. It's like, well, okay, like it's just whatever you want it to be. Like, and nothing happens. Like what? Why do you know why? Like, is there any real reason? Like, as far as I can tell, it's just to win points, like to make it look like they're doing something, but it like,
I guess. I mean, he's just this like mercurial child monarch, right? Like Trump is just a man that you cannot get into the brain of, and like he's very dumb and very ignorant on so many things, and it just seems like, I don't know. Yeah, he's just surrounded by sycophants now more than ever who will not tell him he's wrong about anything, and they'll just try to make his visions into a reality. And no, there's no sense of trying to make sense of it. Like there's just no way to do it, right? It's like the fentanyl thing, right? It's like now I guess that's how Trudeau has kind of bought him off. Like Trudeau has said that he's going to appoint a fentanyl czar, which is like pretty good politics on Trudeau's part, I will say, because that's the kind of shallow thing that like really gets Trump's brain lighting up. Yeah. So yeah, like less than 1% of all fentanyl in the US originates from Canada. Like this, and same with like illegal immigrants. Trump has at various times said that somehow all the illegal immigrants are actually coming from Canada. You know, like less than 1% of all illegal immigrants in the US come from Canada. But, you know, we're going to beef up the border anyway, spend, you know, $900 million of Canadian tax dollars to appease this fantasy. So that's
if anything,
great,
to stop more Americans from getting in so they can buy alcohol on their ski trip or whatever, you know, like who the fuck, like,
well,
yeah.
But it's like, you know, this is the sort of the Alice in Wonderland world we all have to live in. You know, Canada in the last couple of days has been under extreme sort of stress and trauma. You know, all the prime ministers of the provinces have been doing these like, you know, stern state of the nation addresses. You know, the premier of my province here in British Columbia, I was watching it, wrapped. All of my friends were as well, as he tells us like, you know, we're in for a very difficult time, my fellow British Columbians. You know, these tariffs are going to really lead to hundreds of thousands of job losses and all like it's just very, it's I mean, like it's comical in some ways. It's like a black comedy that like just for no reason, Canada is now in this sort of state of economic anxiety, right? With our closest trading partner, where like all of Canada's wealth and success has been based on the premise that we will have a close relationship with the United States. And for that to just randomly go away overnight, right? Like it's just it's like if it's just like if a king, like if America's king like just said like no one shall drive cars anymore, right? It's just like, okay, like how do you make that work, right? Like,
and also having to respond to it seriously too. It's like, well, I still have decorum and I'm still the president or I'm still the prime minister of this, you know, area, and I'm going to address this like it's what it is, which is it's really happening and I have to respond to that. And then the next day he says, you know what, I don't care, I was kidding, it was I don't really care. So like it's I don't man, it's making me go insane, but I want to like be able to like fight back on it, and I feel like the only thing that I've found to be effective is to just mock it, like to just say, hey, like you think you're so high and mighty, like, you know, how many a decade of pearl clutching, and be like, no, you can't do that, Donald Trump, that's against the rules, instead being like, oh, what a fucking moron, like look how stupid this guy looks right now. Like I get that is what appeals, and this maybe can transition to our talk about like masculinity, but like Trump is this figure of like he can do no wrong, he never admits wrong, so he's my guy. So when he does all this dumb shit and then people are like, hey, you just contradicted yourself, hey, you just tanked the economy, hey, this doesn't make any sense, he just says no. Like he never will admit wrongdoing, and that works for everyone else because they're like, well, he's like my daddy, he's like, they literally call him, oh, daddy's home. It's like, yeah, well, daddy, what is daddy? Well, when you're 8, daddy is the all-powerful patriarchal guy who can do no wrong, who protects you and does everything right, and I love him to death, and he is the God King Savior. And so when you make him look like a moron, when you like, you know, call him out, when you like ask him questions, make him stumble on his words, when you portray these people as stupid, like that's how you get the people who are like in the cult to be like, well, wait a minute, if my guy's dumb, I don't want to be in the cult anymore. Like that's the only thing I found that works. It doesn't matter how many studies I bring up, it doesn't matter how many like, you know, bridges I try to build. It's literally just like, hey, look at this idiot, and then like I get someone back. Like has that been something in your experience? Have you been able to like mock things? Because I notice you have comedy in your videos, but you're a little more, I would say, analytical. And this is a good thing. You actually like seem to delve into the real substance, whereas like I'll dip a toe in the substance and then I'll say a bunch of dumb shit, you know.
I wish I could be funnier. I feel like I'm just not naturally like a great comedic performer, so it's not a big thing in my things. But no, I mean, I feel like I agree with you. I mean, it definitely feels like it's worth a shot, just really doubling down on the mockery. I mean, because it's like he is a preposterous figure, and his movement is preposterous. It's full of a lot of just like dopey people, cringy people, I dare say. You know,
Yeah.
like you look at somebody like Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, right? And it's like, how can you regard him as anything but a ludicrous figure, right? Like he is not qualified for this job. He's like a weekend Fox News host, right? It's like there's just so many like self-evident absurdities in the MAGA movement. You know, like the My Pillow guy, right? Like this like coked out like pillow salesman. Like this is the man that we're going to like be taking tips on foreign policy from,
Or like the
right?
Roseanne Barr rap with Tom McDonald. Did you see
Yeah,
that? Where it's
like
like, is this?
absolutely, right? This stuff is cringe as hell, right? So, and because like the problem though that I do think a lot of Trump critics and people on the left is that, you know, they're really sort of fascinated with this idea. And I've seen like, you know, a million YouTube video essays about this kind of thing, right? It's like, you know, the rise of the right, the new right. Oh, like they have all these like intellectuals and like they're in this Project 2025 and like this, they're not like the old Republicans. They're much scarier and they have all, you know what I mean? Like it's not just like undermine the nature of the threat, but it's this idea of like they're like this very worthy opponent. Like they're
Hmm.
intellectually vigorous and serious and like we need to engage with their philosophy and their thinkers and like really deconstruct it, as opposed to just being like, no, this is like fundamentally a movement of like clownish, dopey people who are like washed up, you know, comedians from the 80s, like literally a
Yeah, like
huge
Rob
quantity of them are.
Schneider, Kevin Sorbo.
Yeah.
Like these are the
Yeah,
people
the Hulk
speaking.
Hogan, you
Yeah.
know, right? It's just like you look at the Madison Square Garden, right? And it's like I look at that and like, yeah, it's grotesque and abhorrent in all sorts of ways, but it's also just like embarrassing. Like it's just these are just like lame people. And it's
Yeah.
like this is what the American Renaissance is going to be built from. This is what the American Golden Age is going to be built from. A bunch of like washed up hacks from the 80s and like Charlie Kirk and like the
Or
crowd that
Elon
he
Musk
rallies at
even,
the
like, you know, like
yeah, even
the like you look at the memes he posts and it's like 2014 Facebook shit that is like, you know, it was barely funny back
yeah,
then, but like to him, like he's like, how many crying emojis can you put after something like that and still pretend like you're having a good time? Like it's so bad, and it like baffles me every time I see it because I know the people who would think it's funny, and it's like my 60-year-old boomer dad who would be like, oh, that's a
yeah.
great dad joke, and like they're just discovering the meme. But I guess that's like appealing to a huge swath of the right, and then all the younger right people are just like, whatever, like whatever gets me my fucking like tax cuts. Like they're like this, they think it's
Yeah.
cringe too. But yeah, like I saw someone that's like, yeah, like I expected to be, you know, placed up against the wall and shot in a firing squad, but I'm gonna get like beheaded by some like mall katana guy. Like, you know, it's like the cringiest, dorkiest way to slide into fascism ever, and somehow it's still happening. Like, but
I
what's
mean,
crazy about it is that these the fascism and kind of what I talked about with this like idea of like having this like masculine like embodied figure, like you would think there would be this like infallible like Chad like, you know, leader, but they're all dorks. Like they're all these like
they are all
slob
dorks.
dorks. Like they're just dumb. Like how can you fall both in on the side of I need this kind of patriarchal daddy figure, but at the same time they're just like the cringiest people you've ever met. Like how do you think they reconcile that?
I don't know. I mean, it's a good question though, because I remember I've been reading, I was just kind of scanning around. Oh yeah, this book right here. Really good book. Hitler's People by Richard J. Evans, you know, one of the great sort of scholars of the Third Reich. And it's just a series of profiles of all sort of the leading Nazis. And you realize that like all the leading Nazis were like kind of like pathetic lamos as well.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
just,
like a Himmler
but
and like
it's,
Goebbels. I think they
yeah.
look kind of like losers, you know? Like none of them really looked
Well, I
like
mean,
the
and
Aryan propaganda.
that was one of the that was this was one of like the great sort of jokes that I guess people were making at the time, right? It's like the Aryan is as blonde as Hitler, as like tall and muscular as Goebbels, and as like handsome as Goring, right? So it's like yeah, these people fail on their own metrics, right? And I think that's worth kind of pointing out as well, is just like really remind, because this is the thing too, I find, is that because people want to live in the fantasy world, they want to sort of imagine what their political movement is all about. You really kind of like have to hold people's heads and make them look at what they actually are allied with. You are an ally of the coked out pillow man. He loves you. He supports your president and your presidential candidates. And you know, like this is the kind of thing, like you can't allow people on the right, on part of the you know, the people on the right who want to pretend like MAGA is about something more than it is. Like you can't allow them to get away with it. You
So
have to remind
you
them
go
that,
with
like,
the
no.
strategy of like the hold the dog's head in its piss sort of thing until it realizes that it's like doing that. But yeah, like is that
Well,
kind
it's
of
like well, it's like some like conservative person, whatever, can pretend that, like, you know, he has just like a basically transactional relationship with the Trump Republican Party, and you know, we're still going to get some good policy wins and this kind
Mhm.
of thing. And you know, like I'm sure that there's like lots of the Project 2025 people kind of have this sort of view of things, right? Like they don't respect Trump; they just think he's their obedient puppet that they can get things out of, like Vance or whoever. I'm sure he feels the same way. You know, all of
Oh,
these kind of like tech bro people, they're
do,
so patronizing. So you kind of have to say, it's like, no, this is not your like dream kind of like ideological world, right? Like this is a movement of, again, like washed up 80s stars and weekend Fox talk show hosts in the cabinet, and you know, all of this. So you like, you just kind of have to like aggressively remind them of this. It's like, no, you don't get to move away from Fox News. You own Fox News in all of its cringy majesty. You own
yeah.
every single one of those speakers that's up there at America Fest with you know, the watermelon headed Charlie Kirk, right? Like this is what you are.
So I have heard this strategy from a couple people, and I don't see anyone, almost no one does this, but maybe one I've seen it happen. But I think Destiny said this, and Cody Johnston. I don't know if you know him from Some More News, but they're like
Mm.
the pundits or the journalists who are at these press conferences. They just have to like actually play fucking hardball, and don't be scared of like him pushing back or removing your press credentials. Just be like, hey, JD Vance, did Trump win the 2020 election? Like, ask him and just keep
Yeah.
asking him, and do
Yeah.
not let him move on. And just like you said, like rub their
Yeah.
fucking face in it. And it's like, look, make
Yeah.
them own this, make them have some stumbly, like weaselly little fucking answer at the very least, so that you can clip it and be like, look, this guy is too scared to answer this question. Like, because otherwise it's like, well, I guess he's not going to do it. And I'm going to write 16 opinion pieces about how this is a danger to our democracy that no one's ever going to fucking read. And then like,
Yes.
then what? No, yeah, like you can complain and pearl clutch about it for 8 years and it does nothing. But what you have to do is literally hold their feet to the fire, which no one is doing, like not a single
Mm.
person. And like I think I've seen it happen once, and the one time it happened I was like, thank God. Like I it was something recent, it was something about the oh yeah, it was the Elon salute thing where he, you know, he hit the hard,
Oh
you
yeah.
know,
Yeah.
salute. And on in the panel, this woman's like, okay, you don't think it's a big deal, do it right now, do it in front of everyone,
Yeah.
do it right
Yeah.
now. Like, and he's
Yeah.
like tries to move on, he's like, no, do it right now if it's not a big deal. And it's just
Yeah.
like, yeah, fuck these people. Like, say that to their face. That's what I'm thinking. And that's like, this is a little off point, but like the YouTubers that I enjoy are the ones that are saying the things that I want to shout at the screen to the people that I don't have a platform to shout at. So, you know, like if a Destiny is able to go talk to like a Ben Shapiro, or if like, you know, Cody Johnston is able to, you know, like really like have a million people watch him say, hey, this is all the bullshit that Trump is doing. Like that makes me feel vindicated. That gives me that dopamine hit. And like, that's what needs to
Mm.
happen in these like normie circles. It has to happen on CNN. It has to happen on Fox News. Like go out and just be like, no, you're right. This is bullshit. Here's the piss that you just took. Just fucking sniff it. And it's not happening. I don't know how you force that though. I guess you have experience in that realm, though. How do you think you can transform that media landscape when I think the internet culture that you and I exist in is so disconnected from this, like, oh, CNBC, like, oh geez, what did Trump do again? He took our rights away. Oh
Yeah.
geez, you know, like
Yeah.
how do you get that connection there?
It's hard because like what you're saying, like I think that you've hit on something that's like pretty important, which is like the idea of sort of like genuine conflict and genuine confrontation as a means of accountability. But there's kind of like just like a lot of institutional sort of biases in sort of like the structure of the media that sort of prevent that from happening, right? Like for example, you know, like the media has to be able to get people to go on the air, right? Like you have to be able to get the guests, you know, if you want the vice president of the United States to come on your show, for instance, right? He has to have some sense that that this is going to be worth his time, right?
Yeah.
And that if sort of the press gets a reputation as being too hostile or too unfair, which is of course being broadly
But they already
defined these
have that,
days.
right? Like as
Yeah,
easy fucking lowball pitches that they're giving to these people, they're like, and it's the enemy of the people. They're
I
lying.
know,
They're dead. Like it's like, so what? Fuck
I
it. If
know.
they're gonna say that anyway, triple down, like go into it. This is what I
Yeah,
would say. But like I it feels like
yeah.
the people, and I guess some of these people that run these stations are, like you said, they're like scared. It's like, well, if I can't like play hardball, I can't ask them the hard questions, because
Yeah.
what if it doesn't work out? Like, and I understand that pressure. Like I have you on, you're like a million subscriber YouTuber, I'm a small little dude. I don't feel like I can't ask you anything I want to, but I would
Mm.
feel just a little anxious knowing that if I said the wrong thing, I have the wrath of your community like coming down on me. Like I get it, but at the same time, it's like, well, what's the point? Like, what's the point of having principles if you're not going to say what you think? Like, how do you get
Yeah.
that message to a producer, to the head of Fox News, to the head of CNN, to the head of, like, is that even
Yeah.
possible, or are they just they're fucked, and it's just a downward slope from here on out?
Well, I mean, the other institutional bias, I guess, is that they are ultimately making something that people there has to be an audience for, right? And I think that I
I
don't
would
know,
watch
like I
them
mean, all of
yelling at
these,
each other. I know a lot of people who would. So
yeah.
yeah,
Well, I mean, but see, like I mean, the thing is, like the public does give conflicting messages, right? Like, and this is why things feel very incoherent at times, right? Because there are people that say they like to see politicians held accountable, they like that kind of conflict, but then there's other people that say, oh, there's too much yelling in politics. People are too mean to each other. Why can't they just like focus on all the things they get along with, right?
yeah.
So I don't know. It's like I think that like you definitely need someone to give it the old college try, right? Like there's have you ever seen that, like the British do this a lot, and I've had like some trouble or problems with British reporting because I find it can be a little much at times. Have you ever seen, there's this very infamous interview that the former head of the British Conservative Party, Michael Howard, I think his name was doing this really like tough interview with the BBC, and the BBC guy asks him a question, and Michael Howard doesn't answer it. He kind of like wishy-washy sort of steps around it. And so the BBC guy just keeps asking the question again and again and again and again. And it goes on for like I don't know, like 10 minutes of just asking the same question over and over and over. And
Hmm.
they're both like just digging in. And
Yeah.
it's like, that's kind of compelling in a way, because it's really sort of showing that this man is being held accountable for his lie and is
Yeah.
being dishonest. But on the other hand, you can imagine that people are just like, that's terrible television. Like, who wants to watch just this people yammer back and forth about the same thing in an endless cycle? So I don't know, like you can
All I'm
kind of
saying is, if
sense
that's a
we're all,
generational
yeah.
thing, let them all die out, because the young people, we crave the minds and we crave the yelling. Okay, like it's really what
Yeah,
we need more of.
yeah.
When you mentioned the BBC, it made me think of that Andrew, what's his name, interview. I don't remember the last name, but he interviewed Ben Shapiro, and he was like, he's a conservative
Oh yeah,
guy,
yeah,
but he gets Ben Shapiro on, and
yeah.
he's like, hey, what do you have to say about this? What do you have to say about this? Like, I'm going to hold you accountable for these things. And he's like, it's very clear you're a liberal with liberal bias, and you're attacking me. It's like, no,
Yeah, yeah.
I'm just holding you accountable to the words you said, which is something that is
Yes.
apparently this esoteric, crazy, out of left wing field. So much so that when Ben Shapiro hears this, he's like taken aback. Oh my God, you're going to ask me about the things I said? And yet this should be the
Mm.
norm. I really do think it should be. But again, I'm also not the primary consumer of cable news. So like maybe that would just alienate the 45 plus voting base that is also like, the only people that still have cable. I don't know. But I think we should
No,
do
I
it.
mean it's an interesting insight, because it does sort of make me wonder if, because I definitely remember like when I was growing up, it was very much the dominant sort of ethos was that there was too much conflict, too much political conflict. I mean, that was, I'm sure you've seen the notorious viral clip of Jon Stewart yelling at Tucker Carlson for
Yeah, please stop. You're hurting this country. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yes,
yeah,
yes.
right. And so it's like I think it's an interesting thesis to say, like, maybe have we overcorrected now? Like maybe are things a little too conciliatory? Because like even like when you sort of see these like the new media, right, like with Joe Rogan and Theo Vaughn and all these these interviews that Trump and Vance went on that were supposedly so decisive, right? Like they're all just love-ins, right? Like they're
Yeah,
not full of
it's not even
conflict. And
questions. It's still, which is funny because
yeah,
Joe Rogan notoriously, he will get people on for 3 hours, and like you can watch this in his Candace Owen interview or any of his other ones. Like, hey, you say some crazy stuff. Explain that to me. Terrence Howard. You think
mhm,
1 + 1 = 2? Let's hear you out, the whole shebang. But then he gets a Trump on, and I think it is maybe that phenomenon where either he agrees with him or he's scared to alienate the part of his audience, a huge part of his audience that likes him, to actually ask him like, hey, how the fuck are you going to implement tariffs? How is that going to make prices go down? Just ask that question. Ask him how tariffs work. Like, that's such an easy Joe Rogan thing to do. I know his like tiny monkey brain could ask that question, but he won't.
Yeah.
The problem is not that these people have these platforms. The problem is that it's one guy, and that one guy has now the say over who comes on and what questions are asked,
Yeah.
and versus like I would assume when you're at these news stations or when you worked in this area, there's a little more of like a cohesion of multiple people saying like, oh, maybe I want to veto that, or oh, hey, maybe you shouldn't ask that question. Like there's a group of
Yeah.
people making a rational cause, and it's not just one dude who is now the judge, jury, and executioner over the entire
Yeah.
narrative for millions of people watching, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's it's a good insight. I don't know if it's very tough. Like the media climate that we exist in now is just we're still kind of figuring out the sort of the contours of it. We're still trying to come up with like how do you navigate this space? What is the obligation of, the interviewer? What is a good interview? What is a good show? How edited should it be? How biased, how unbiased should it be? How much conflict, how much little conflict should there be? Right? Like these are all just very there it's an I suppose you could say my old sort of conservative instincts kicking in. It's like it's a very entrepreneurial moment, right? So people can try a lot of different strategies. People like you and me who have this wonderful platform of YouTube which offers us so much freedom, we can be the Obama line, we can be the change we want to see in the world. Like I think it behooves all of us that have access to new media platforms to try different strategies and to try, like I'm hoping to start an interview show of my own, hopefully for the context of the Canadian election. I want to interview the candidates for prime minister.
Yeah.
And I had a conversation actually with another character a few weeks ago in which I was sort of like striking a somewhat different tone, where I was sort of saying like, well, I feel like people want to see the sort of the easygoing conversational kind of topics. But now talking with you, I'm sort of thinking maybe I'm changing my mind a little bit, and maybe I do think that there is a little bit more conflict that might be necessary.
Well, it's
But
hard
the
because
point is,
my ethos is my channel. Sorry to interrupt, but like
yeah,
it is to try to be a little more empathetic and to reach out. And like one of my more recent
yeah,
videos is like, hey, how do you talk to these people that you have these fundamental disagreements with, who want to vote for things that will destroy your life potentially? I do think that's
mm,
really important. I do think that the problem with the yelling and the conflict is that if you don't actually have any like weight behind the things you're yelling, it doesn't matter how much you say, racist, Nazi,
mm,
blah, 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 because that, you tried that for 4 years and that didn't really work. I think that when you are talking about the pundits themselves, that's a whole different story where if you can like, playing hardball doesn't mean yelling. Playing hardball doesn't mean you don't have a weight. Playing hardball means, hey, I'm going to like surgically deconstruct you in front of millions of people and make you look like an idiot. Not
yeah,
I'm going to scream at you and pearl clutch and like, because there's this classic interview from like the 60s, not classic, but Marjorie Taylor Greene went on 60 Minutes and she's like, Democrats, they're the party of pedophiles, and like the interviewer's just like, wow, I can't believe you'd say that. That's crazy, and it's like, why? Why? Tell them why. You can't just say that. Everyone who already thinks
yeah,
it's crazy thinks it's crazy. Great. You just gave them a little, haha, yeah, you're right, that was crazy. What about all the people that agree with her? The people that voted for in? Like, they want to hear something, and your only answer to that is like, that's weird. It's like, that's not enough. And so I don't think you shouldn't play hardball. I do think there is a lot of
mm,
room for compassion and back and forth and discussion, because especially on the personal level of like your friends and your family, or like the people like right outside of your circle, like I want to pull them back in. You can't yell at those people. You can't surgically deconstruct them. Like shame doesn't work. Shame is gone. That word shouldn't even exist anymore. But you should play hardball with the people that are not even good faith, these like politicians that are doing everything in their power to fuck you over. So if you're interviewing big people, I'd say, yeah, play hardball with them. But if you're interviewing these small people, look at me giving you advice like you're not like 10 times bigger than you. What am I doing? Yeah, but that's my opinion on
it's
it.
all good. No, that's fair. I'll tell you who I think is one of the most fascinating sort of figures in American journalism today is this writer at the New Yorker. I'm not sure how you pronounce his last name. His name is Isaac Chotiner or Chotiner. Have you ever seen his stuff?
Potentially. I
It's
don't pay attention to the names of
I
the
love the
people I'm
New
reading.
Yorker. It's great. But like Isaac
Chotiner.
Chotiner, or however you say it. Anyway, the thing is like he does these interviews that are like this very interesting mix. He gets like all sorts of like wacky people on, and a lot of times it's people like he deeply disagrees with. But he has, I think, this kind of like surgical approach where it's like he really holds people accountable in a way that's not overly adversarial, but instead kind of has this tone where it's like, okay, I'm trying to get a clear sense of exactly what you're saying here. So you're saying that the Democrats rigged the election. So how did they do that? They put the ballots, like this
Yeah,
kind of
walk
thing,
me
like
through it.
really deconstructing, and his articles are sometimes have a somewhat sort of bitchy tone in the sense that they'll often have like little footnotes attached where it'll be like square brackets. It's like, note, this did not actually happen, and this kind of thing, right? But they're really like he's a really good and novel type of interviewer. And I feel like this is an example of that kind of entrepreneurial sort of spirit that I'm talking about, that he's trying something, he's trying to be himself, and he's trying his approach of what accountability looks like to him, what an honest interview looks like to him, and what he thinks is in the interests of his audience to receive. So he's one guy that I would encourage your viewers to check out if you want to see someone who's doing, actually sort of trying to live out some of these principles that we're discussing in a novel and I think, a very effective way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think one of the big downfalls of media today is no one really reads. Like not a lot of
Mm,
people read, and like I'm
yeah,
I'm definitely guilty of that. But like I do when I find someone like that who has that cutting edge. I guess the issue is like no matter how much I advocate for that, those people need to be on TV. Like he needs to do what you're
yeah,
describing on TV, and I think
yeah,
that's the clip that gets shared on TikTok, not the like, hey, here's a let me read this
yeah,
article to you. Unfortunately,
yeah,
as good as that used to
yeah.
be, it's just not good enough anymore, which is really sad. But
Jim, I was very encouraged. Do you know Jamel Bouie, the New York Times
this
columnist?
also sounds familiar. Yeah.
He's great. I love him a lot. Jamel Bouie. Yeah, that's how you say his name. He's great. Like I think he's a very principled, sort of liberal pundit, very informed, very educated, like knows so much about American history and a young guy. I'm sure. I think he's a little bit younger than I am. And he recently sort of transit. I think he's still writing for the New York Times, but now he's also doing YouTube. He just started his own YouTube channel, and I just think that's really cool and really important. But like, he's not just resting on his laurels about having this great exalted position as a columnist on America's paper of record, but he's actually sort of like going where it matters, and the
Yeah.
fact is, like you said, like a lot of people. I remember I was once at a sort of new media conference, and this like sort of douchey guy on the stage is like telling us about the future of media, but it was a very insightful thing and it's always stuck with me. He says no one wants to read what they can listen to, and no one wants to listen to what they can watch, right? So it's just there is this kind of natural sense where it's like at the end of the day, audio visual is king. And if you can present your message through the medium of video and audio simultaneously, you know, you can like it or lump it, but that's what's going to get the most eyeballs. That's what's going to get the most engagement in
Do,
this modern
do,
world of ours.
do you think that the Trump going on, the Joe Rogan, the Aiden Ross, like that kind of media circuit, do you think that had a significant impact on him winning?
I think so, because I think it got him and his message and his vibe, probably more importantly, sort of into the consciousness of a lot of previously sort of disengaged people. Like we know that Trump did very well with people that are the least engaged in politics, are the least informed about politics, and are like the least likely to vote, right?
What
Like
is a
Trump did,
tariff?
like this.
It's
Well,
just like
exactly,
a
right?
global trend going up.
I mean, you always see this, right? Where it's like, Trump does something crazy and then someone will share a meme about like that word spiked in Google searches, the day after. So no, it's true. And it's like, I mean, I guess from a sort of elitist perspective, that does bring out sort of like rackle me a little bit where it's like, oh, the fate of democracy rests on like the least informed among us. But, that's the media world we live in now. And so if politicians can appeal to that set, if they can appeal to sort of like passively engaged people on the basis of their charisma or celebrity or whatever, or their proximity to other celebrities that have a high trust for one reason or another, and we know that Joe Rogan is trusted a lot.
Hmm.
But my
For some
buddies at the
reason.
Bulwark have done a lot of my pals at the Bulwark, they have this one podcast that's really worth listening to as well. I'd encourage your audience to give it a listen if they haven't, called Focus Groups. And they just do focus groups with ordinary American voters. Like they pick people specifically, often like very narrowly typed. So they had one focus group episode where it was like literally just people who listen to Joe Rogan. And then they ask them about their political opinions and why they voted for Trump, which of course they all did, right? And
Yeah.
it's very revealing to just kind of get a sense of like what actually motivates voters from their own mouth, right? And a lot of it is just this vague sense where it's like, well, Joe is like a good guy, and like I like how, he holds people accountable and how he's curious and how he's not really like a left or right wing guy, and he just kind of like, this kind of stuff, right? So it's like that kind of credibility that this new sort of subspecies of online influencer has, like, it's not something to scoff at. And again, like, it's easy to be too good for it if you're a certain type of politician. But Trump, who is like, has no shame at all, was kind of creative in that way. And I think he, deserves credit for it, in the sense that I do think it helped him. And I do think that if Kamala Harris had done more of these kinds of things, I think it would have been worth a shot, right?
Well,
Would have it
I
had
think
gone
she
well for
actually
her if she'd
got a
gone on Joe
little
Rogan?
stonewalled by Joe Rogan. I don't know if you
She
saw.
did. She did. The
Yeah.
narrative on that is changing, right? Like initially it was like, oh, she was too good for Joe Rogan, but now
Yeah,
it does seem like he
it
was
seemed like he's
actively trying to hurt her chances.
yeah,
But
which
that's
makes
but see, like
sense.
that's
Like, I get why he would
yeah,
do it if he
yeah,
wanted Trump to win, but it is kind of like, all right, like, what do
yeah,
you do? This is what I mean when it's like one guy who, with the million viewers, the 10 million viewers, he says, you know what, I'm not going to platform the other one. And so, like, now what?
yeah,
Like, because that is the
yeah.
world we live in now. But like, how do you even combat that? I guess you just have to. I mean, God, it's so cringy.
Well,
But
I
I
mean,
hate
like
when they say this. But we need the Joe Rogan of the left. We need the
yeah,
crazy conspiracy theorist left guy.
yeah.
But
Who's also, and like this is the thing too, like who's also prepared to shill for the Democrats, right? Which
oh,
is something that like I feel
but
like a lot of the like is
do you think we need that? I think we have that. We have like the little, what's his name? Like the who's the? Am I allowed to say this? Like the little Twinkie boy, the Harry Sisson. The or like there's like an army of them. They've created like 6 or 7 of these little like 20-year-old like Democrat shills who are like like they'll just toe the line, and like they do the whole cringy, like, no matter what the Republican did bad, they're gonna come out with like a 10-second
yeah,
TikTok where they're like, this idiot did this thing and look at this infograph, and
yeah,
it's like this very like manufactured, and it is manufactured like talking points, and that to me is such a like political like poison. Like, I think it's that people
mm,
see that and they're like, this is fake. And I don't think that's what Joe Rogan is, right? Like, he'll toe the line of the Republican Party, but he's specifically kind of approaching it as like this guy knows what's up, like he's like me, versus these other people
yeah,
who
yeah,
are
yeah.
like, well, I am trying to, how do I appeal to the youth vote? Well, what if we just took the exact same boring feckless message and put it through a 20-year-old's mouth? And like, it doesn't really seem to resonate that much, even though these guys have millions of followers. I mean, maybe it's working for some people. I find that just like
Well,
useless. But
I mean, the point that I'm trying to get at though is that there are obviously like a lot of big shot lefty influencers on YouTube and social media in general. The problem though, I made a cartoon about this the other day, if you saw it
I
on
did see that
Twitter.
one. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. But like that's the problem though, is that there is cred to be gained in the America's left-wing subculture about shitting on Democrats, right? In a way that there isn't cred to be gained in right-wing American subculture for shitting on Trump, right? Like if you're a left-winger on BreadTube or Video Essay World or whatever, and you talk about how like you can't in good conscience, as much as bad as Trump may be, I just can't in good conscience ever imagine voting for Democrats or Kamala Harris or Genocide Joe or whatever, right? Like that gets you a lot of sort of clout in that particular subculture. Whereas if a Republic, or if a sort of center right kind of cultural figure, I mean, you even saw a bit of this with Joe Rogan, where he sort of like tried to gingerly suggest that maybe he likes RFK better
oh
than
my
Trump, and
God.
then
And just
immediately,
and instantly they came down on him.
yeah,
Yeah, that was crazy.
yeah.
I will
So like,
actually contest that, though. I think there is room for it, in the same way that like a far left radical, if you shit on the Democrats, you get this kind of pull from people who are not happy with the Democrats, and then even like people on the right might even like you. Like a Chapo Trap House might do that, and they'll
yeah,
get like right wing viewer base from that, because they're like, well, these guys
yeah,
shit on the Democrats in a way I like. But
yeah,
there is that on the right. It's just the far right. It's the Nick Fuentes. It's the people who are like, oh, Trump is too nice to Israel. Matt Walsh isn't racist enough. I'm getting some of those comments on my newest videos, and it's like, yeah, these people like it when I shit on the right, not because they agree with me, but because they're like, yeah, these people are not as right as I want them to be, and you're correctly
I
pointing out their flaws. So
I just think it's a much smaller faction.
it
Like I
is.
think
It
like
is
even Nick
much smaller. Yeah.
Fuentes, like even Nick Fuentes took a lot of flack for kind of, again, like he was like when he introduces JD Vance, who when Trump introduces JD Vance, who has a non-white wife, right? Like that
Yeah.
was the deal breaker for Nick Fuentes, or at least Nick Fuentes thought that that might be a sort of thing that would resonate. It
Yeah.
didn't, right? And then so he gives up, and then he, you know, celebrates Trump's win and all the rest of it, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's like it's just, you get what I'm saying. There is a disequilibrium here where it's like there is a sort of faction on the left that is hungry to be told about why Democrats suck and why it's good if you don't vote for them, in
Yeah.
a way there just isn't anything comparably large on the
Yes. Okay.
cultural
I
right.
agree. Yeah. They do consolidate a lot better than we do, and I do think this is going to sound pretentious, but I do think that's because like the more educated people like are able to distinguish those lines a lot better. Where they're
Yeah.
like, oh well, you're not educated on this policy. Like I think a huge divide in the left right now that could be fixed is on guns. I don't know if you have strong gun opinions, but like there's not a
Mm.
single Democrat politician who has a position on guns that like seems to come from an informed place. Like you can have a position
Yeah.
on like, hey, we should ban them all. Hey, we should do better background checks. Hey, we should do better safety. But none of them like know what they're talking about. None of them know how they work. None of them know the terms. And so any single gun owner who hears that is like, this guy's like doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. And like that education like or lack thereof is like divides a whole swath of voters versus on the Republican
Mm.
side it just doesn't matter. It's just like, oh, he said the thing that made me feel good, let's go for that person. Like for the most
Yeah.
part is what I see.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's fair, and I guess sort of the Democrats kind of have to find a comparable issue that I guess the Republicans are equally sort of ignorant and bad at talking about. For a long time, that was stuff relating to like wealth and all that, and maybe that will now come roaring back
It worked
because
for a little bit, but I think
yeah.
the Democratic donor class they are not against it, right? They're like, well, hold on, I like being in bed with Wall Street. I like having some of this like lobbying power, and so like Bernie Sanders comes in, and it actually does resonate with a lot of people organically, but not enough people. And then also the Democratic establishment says, no, no, we're not doing that. Like that you're too outside of the the Overton window of what we want. Like I don't like maybe an AOC is like moved a little right enough that maybe they'll kind of they let her in. She's part of the club now,
Well,
maybe, but.
I mean, there's nuance to it, right? Because it's like, Americans don't like socialism, right? Like socialism still polls very poorly. Like people do
Yeah.
not want a politician that sort of reeks too much of that kind of thing, right? And I know that there's a whole sort of mythology on the left that like Bernie was somehow shafted, and that's the only reason why he was never
Yeah.
the Democratic nominee. But I
Yeah.
think that there is a sort of natural aversion to too much of that kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
I do think that like there, like Obama, for example, prosecuted the case well against Mitt Romney by portraying him as like an out of touch elitist, who just doesn't understand common people and that kind of thing, right? So I think like there's a way to do this kind of class war politics without it seeming like I hate capitalism and the entire American sort of economic system is fundamentally unjust, right? And I
Yeah.
think Trump is in some ways sort of like really teeing up this ball by openly surrounding himself with like
The
the richest of
billionaire
the rich,
oligarchs,
the
but
billionaires, just like
they literally they'll take a picture of these like six billionaires winning the election and being like the establishment is scared. It's like what.
yeah.
Like what.
It's
Like.
preposterous, right? And so like this should be an obvious opening, right? It's like the idea of Elon Musk as shadow president. I think like that, for example, is a strong messaging that like really like gets at Trump's insecurities, gets at the insecurities of people who thought that they're like, and again, like I don't mean it in this kind of like condescending, like, oh, they thought they were voting for a populist, but now they've been deceived. It's like, no, it's like this is like really like pushing their head into it kind of stuff, right? It's like, okay, like you can think you're voting for whatever the hell you want, but like this is the man who's actually running the country now. It's Elon Musk, this billionaire rich guy. So it's like,
It's him
make
and
peace with
six
that
like
because
20-year-olds in the Department of Treasury right now, or like it's actually insane. Like they're the way they're accessing the systems and have control, and they're not like an official government agency. Like that stuff's like really scary. I
yeah,
don't know how everyone's just kind of
yeah,
overlooking it, but yeah, you're right. And we need to shove everyone's face in and be like, this is crazy. This is not okay. This is not normal. And just because I don't want to forget it, if this is a type of politic going forward, I want to call this piss politics, which is like shoving it in your
yeah.
face. I hope we can coin that
Okay,
term today. Piss politics.
yeah.
I'm a
It's
subscriber to piss
politics.
politics, and we should all be shoving each other's
Uh-huh.
face.
Yes.
Okay. I had one other thing that I really wanted to get to. Unless you have other topics to cover, I think this would be more beneficial to me and no one in my audience, but screw them. I'm the main character.
Okay.
I'm a blossoming YouTuber was the word I was looking for.
Mm.
And I was wondering what advice you could give to me as I try to expand my channel, as I try to make this a career, and as I try to push better messaging, because you clearly have got it down. You're doing something right. And the first thing I'll ask, just to narrow it down for you, is, because I ask everyone this now, should I make a Discord? Because everyone keeps telling me to, and I really think it's a terrible idea.
I mean, I have a Discord. I don't really know much about how Discord works, as we
as we discovered. Yes. Oh,
I mean,
real quick, my chat's asking if they can ask questions. Yeah, you guys, if you ask questions, I'll try to address those at the end. But go ahead. Yeah. Sorry, JJ.
I mean, I like using my Discord for one reason and one reason only. I mean, other than providing a sort of community for people that want to engage in Discord. I mean, I think it's good to just offer these things if people want these things, right? I mean, I'm not very engaged in it because I'm too much of a boomer, but I do use my Discord once a week to preview my videos, and then my audience kind of help me find typos or editing mistakes, which is often very useful.
So you
right?
you show them a week early, and it's like your focus group, if you will. Like they'll be like, hey, like
not a week early. I'm not that on top of it. I show it to them like a few hours before I'm planning on posting it, so that they can just, because they know it now. It's kind of like because I always post on like Sunday, so it's sort of like my Sunday morning ritual. Oh, hey guys, it's JJ, and here's the video. Can you guys help me out? And then they watch it and they enjoy it. It's kind of like a fun tradition, and they get into it, right?
That's
so
cool.
It's like that's like a modest use of what I've found Discord to be helpful for. But there's people that are more into Discord, people younger than myself, who might like to chat. But it's like, yes. I guess the thing is, like, if it's the same with like Patreon or any of these kinds of things. If you're gonna have these things, at least have a strategy for what you want to do with them. Like, don't just use them idly, or people might resent you for it. But
yeah, well, I don't want to do it because I've seen the kind of communities they form, the parasocial relationships, and the the worst thing I've seen from these Discords is that people that are struggling and who are lonely and who need an outlet will use it as a crutch to prevent them from going out and like really changing their life. And I've seen it happen 1,000 times, and I just like don't want to facilitate it. Like, it really makes me upset because I know good things can come out of it. People can share resources with each other. I've heard people get married in these, like, from meeting people in this Discord, not in the Discord, obviously, but like they meet in real life, get married. And it's like, that's great. I love that. But like, I don't want there to be a soy pill community. I don't want to be the guy that everyone's here because they all know me, right? Like, I'm just a guy, all right? Like, no one's hanging out. Well, like, my friends don't hang out so they can hang out with me. My friends hang out with each other together as a group because we like each other. And the idea that like that I'm fostering this like weird cult of personality, like, it's just like, it's gross to me. Like, I already see it happening, like in my chat, where it's like, oh, like, soy for president, oh, soy for them. I'm like, guys, no, stop. The only difference between you and me is that for some reason 40,000 people decided to subscribe to me. That's the only difference. My opinions hold just as much weight as yours. Unfortunately, like, we're all the same voting, like, power. Like, please do not turn this into some weird messiah thing like every other person does. And that's what I think the Discord does, and that's why I don't want to make it. But
no, it's fine. Like, I don't want to have a Reddit, a subreddit for that reason. Like, I just find Reddit people to be, like, I don't know, awful in some ways, and so I'm just like afraid of that whole scene. And I've told people, like, when people have tried to start Reddit subreddits for me, I'm like, no, JJ, your king, decree that this must not exist. Right?
Someone already did that for me, and I'm like, I don't know about
you should just tell them.
Well, okay, here's what I'll say is, like, I'm not affiliated. Yeah. Not only am I not affiliated with this, I disavow everything posted on here, even if it's good about me. I disavow. Don't touch it. Like, yeah.
No, it's true, but it's like, I mean, you do hit on a good point. Like, my Discord seems fine, but definitely, like, I feel like my some of my YouTuber buddies have told me, like, stories about their communities kind of like just spiraling out of control, in part because, and again, I think this is what I was saying before, like, if you're not really into it, then it's probably good to err on the side of not doing it, because you don't just kind of like want to set it and forget it, because then it can sort of metastasize into something that you see none of yourself in.
Wait, I saw this call out in chat, and I have to repeat it because this is poignant. You said you hate Reddit, but look at your room. Like, your room is so Reddit. You've got all the figurines and the Nintendo. I like it. Don't get me wrong, but it's very Reddit. Like, it's very, like,
I don't know enough. I don't even know enough about Reddit to like know that reference.
I'll say this:
like,
what it means is like the Reddit, like the soy boy, like look at my stuff, look at my Funko Pops. Like, you kind of have this, like, the soy room, and I personally think it's cool, but like.
You got a
Funko Pops. Yeah, I think if you should you should ask J-Reg about that. You should say, hey, does my room look Reddit, and see what he says. I'm really
Oh,
curious.
I'd be curious to know. I do
um,
love. I mean, this is like one of my most. This is one of my most. This is actually one of my positions that actually drives JREG the most up the wall. Is just kind of like how unapologetically into consumerism I am, and how much I just like buying just random plastic shit. Like sometimes,
it's
when
fun. I
we're
get it. I don't know why everyone like
yeah,
I it's like the same with everyone who like hated on Minecraft and Fortnite and Funko Pops. I'm like, if they're
yeah,
happy, whatever. Like if you make it your personality, if it's your crutch, like yeah, it's a little cringe, but like whatever, man. I like little trinkets. I got figures everywhere. I got dumb stuff. I got
yeah.
art. Like I people shit on that stuff way too much. Oh yeah,
It's part of our culture, right?
people are telling
You
me to
know.
show you.
Oh, you've got some.
I've got Trump Duck. I don't know if you've seen this one.
Oh
I
yeah,
got
I've
that
seen
at the
that. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Trump rally, but yeah, I've got also just dumb crap lying around. So
I have the lib Rosie the Riveter
I thought those were
duck.
breasts for a second, or are they? Is
Oh
she flexing or is she breasting? What is
yeah,
that?
she's doing the the thing from the poster.
Oh God. Okay, I thought it was a Howard the Duck
Yeah.
situation. I was looking at duck boobs, but
No, no, no.
um, okay, cool. I think I respect that you respect my opinion not to make a Discord, and that's good. I think you
Yeah,
see my hesitancy. Would you be open to me asking some questions? I saw some people wanted to ask you some things in chat. Are you open to that? Or
of
obviously you don't have
course,
to
of
answer any of
course.
these
Bring it
questions.
on.
I saw
No, for sure.
one that was repeated, and it was it's what do you think about the well? First, hold on. Super chats gets priority. They give me money. He said,
Yeah, of
Ezra, thank
course.
you, Ezra, for the $5. Love both your channels. Unexpected but welcome crossover. Your videos are great, soy pill,
Oh,
and you're definitely going to blow up soon. Thank you so much. And the other one, Emperor Tiger Star, says, I hate when people call Reddit a forum. It's not. Isn't it a forum? I guess the only difference is a
I don't know.
forum doesn't have upvotes. I think like I really do miss that Wild
Yeah,
West internet where it was just like, hey, like you can just see whatever the next person posted. And I think the only thing that's really like that anymore is like 4chan, which is sad because it's full of crazy people, but like
yeah.
it still has that charm. So the question though for you was what is your thoughts on the whole like groomer narrative coming from Republicans and how they're kind of like demonizing the LGBT community? And there's even like a split between like the trans community and the gay community within the Republican Party, where they're like, oh, like
Yeah,
we're the good LGBTs or LGBs, I guess, and they're cutting off the T or
yeah,
trying to, which is I think
yeah,
not going to end well for them because they're going to overturn Obergefell. So like,
yeah.
I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I mean it's bad, it's abhorrent, like I'm a gay man myself, so obviously I feel like very sort of personally attacked when sort of any sort of oh, you've got one of those? I've got one of those too.
Oh yeah, no, I got a super
Hold
chat
on.
from Cody Moon who always tells me to put the hat on. So,
Are we
oh
putting
hell
are
yeah,
we
yes, yes. Can we both spin them?
are
Go
we doing
ahead.
our of course.
Oh, we're the goodest boys. Let's go.
We're the goodest boys, yo.
Cody's $5 is
No,
going so far right now. Thank you, Cody.
is this is one of your
Cody Moon is a
patented
specific
bits?
chatter who will like frequently donate $5 and ask me to spin the hat. Like it is like the only
Oh.
thing that like I am asked to do, and I'm like I can't say no. You gave me $5, so sorry. You were saying something serious about
No.
how your livelihood was
Yeah,
on the
no, that's
line.
this is why I had to take off the hat because I don't want to be talking about sort of my rights as a gay man
Should I
while I'm
take
wearing
mine
this.
off too? Like as an ally, should
Uh,
I? Can I? Should I?
sure.
Okay, yeah.
I don't know. It's up to you. It's your show. But no, I mean like it's obviously it's abhorrent. And again, like maybe this is another example of piss politics, right? Because like there is a
Yes,
certain
yes, it's
sense that
catching
people
on.
have there's a certain sense that I think some sort of MAGA people have, particularly I think someone like the Joe Rogan types, who are themselves like quite sort of socially liberal or libertarian or kind of live and let live and aren't that bothered by this kind of stuff. Like, I think it's important for people to be aware of the degree that the Republican Party, that the MAGA movement is still a very, very explicitly Christian evangelical movement that is very obsessed with enforcing like aggressively traditional Christian notions of sexual propriety,
Yeah.
which includes that, like, no gay people, no trans people, no gay marriage, no sexual diversity of any sort, no gender diversity of any sort, right? Like, just like really, really heavy handed stuff. And then, yeah, like the constant sort of like whisper campaigns that anybody who is sort of sexually or gender diverse is like some sort of creepy pedophile perverted like molester, right? Like
Yeah.
it's really like gross. And I think that it's not what I even think most sort of like center right people think, and they definitely don't want to think that about their own movement, that
Yeah,
it
I don't
is
even think
still
most
sort of
conservatives think it. I agree. Like
no,
even
no.
like the more far right people I know who are like I would say even like anti-gay are at the very least only that because they're just ignorant of it. It's just like, oh, I just don't want to see it like that.
Yeah,
They're
yeah,
like they're on the they've been pulled so far they're just like, it just I don't want to look at it, which is like, I still don't like that, but like they're not like the hateful like ban this, they should all
yeah,
be converted like people. And somehow they're kind of throwing their weight in with the people who are in power who are still stuck like 40 years ago. They're like, yeah, no, we're getting rid of all
yeah,
of this, like this is gone
yeah,
now. So
yeah.
yeah, like what do you
But I mean,
yeah.
like, I mean, but to get, I think, like, in a more sort of broader kind of sense, like, the groomer stuff is a real sort of reflection of just the the decay of sort of political rhetoric, right? So it's like you just kind of think like as things accelerate, they inevitably get more and more extreme and more sort of unapologetically like crass and vulgar and so forth, right? And there's just kind of like just little lines that you're sort of seeing being crossed one after another, right? Like when I was young, politicians would sort of like never swear. Like now increasingly like politicians just openly say, "Oh, that's shitty, that's bullshit, fuck him," and all this. Like the Madison Square Garden rally, for example, just constant like swearing, sexual innuendo. Then another line is where you just like openly accuse people of being pedophiles, because pedophiles is like the worst possible insult. Like to sexually molest a child is like the
Yeah,
worst thing you can
it's like
possibly do.
kicking a
So
puppy.
why
It's
not?
like yeah, like
Well, yeah, but
you're
it's like
hurting.
so if nothing, if we're really in this kind of like purely sort of belligerent sort of state of politics where nothing matters and all that matters is sort of just crushing the enemies, then why not reach for the biggest gun of all and just start firing that
The
indiscriminately? And
pedophile
then
gun,
what's
as they
kind of,
call it.
well, yeah, but then it's like, but like it's worrying because then you sort of think, well, what's next after that? And they're like, is
How do
next
we
just going to be like
escalate this?
openly? Well, because then it's like obviously at some point you get to the point where it's just like openly calling for violence against your political enemies. Like this person should be killed. Like this person should be shot
Yeah,
in the street. He should
right.
die.
And
Right. And
that's
it's like it's
yeah.
important to understand that like we get to these kind of sort of really dystopian places not just overnight. It's like there's a gradual acceleration of the kind of political rhetoric that's considered acceptable. And I think once it became politically acceptable on the right to like call Joe Biden a pedophile or to,
Or say the whole
call him
Democratic
like,
Party is the party of pedophiles is like the new thing. I'm not everyone's saying it, but
yeah,
like
yeah,
that's where the Overton window is. Like the farthest right in Congress
yeah,
is saying that it's gonna trickle down. Those people are gonna get elected more, and that's gonna become the narrative. So yeah, like how do you even
oh
fight
yeah.
back against it though? Because especially when the same people doing that are partnered with like a Matt Gaetz who's like allegedly, literally a pedophile. Like what do you even do? It's like okay, but you're literally trafficking a 17-year-old. Like what is this?
Well, I
I
mean,
like yeah, you
I
could
think
say
I think
like
like you can't.
yeah, is it a crabs in a bucket situation, or is it like just say, "Hey, this isn't true"? Like, how do you piss
Well, I mean,
politics
I
out of
think
this?
well, I think just like it's another example of where people need to be held aggressively accountable for this. Like if Marjorie Taylor Greene just kind of like, sends off a meme that implies Biden's a pedophile or whatever, like that should be like the question that she is asked for the rest of her political career,
Piss
right? Like
politics.
there's
Let's
just
go. Shove her face
yeah,
in it.
it's like well, it's like because like this is the thing, right? It's like, and definitely like a lot of right wing sort of MAGA politics these days is always kind of like playing with this kind of stuff, and oh, it's all a joke and it's just ironic, and we're just it's like the Elon thing with the Nazi salute, and I'm sure you saw that there was that Catholic priest who does the Nazi salute, and then this
But
like
they actually
woman
fired
who
him. They held him accountable for it. It's like,
they
yeah,
held, and that's good,
yeah,
and that's
do
good,
that.
right? Yeah, no, but it's good because, but I mean, like the thing though is that you sort of see uh he thought he was being very clever, right? Like he's doing this thing, and like I think that was also Elon's motive, where it's like, ho ho ho, I'm not supposed to do this,
Yeah, a
but like
little
there's enough
tee.
ambiguity that you don't really know what I believe, right? So it's like you
Except
just kind
he's
of you
too
have to like
stupid. He didn't ambiguously. He really just like he hit it, So
yeah,
like,
yeah,
but still people defended it. But yeah, yeah, you
and
do.
yeah,
Sorry.
they have this pretense that like it's all being sort of done in good fun and all the rest of it, and so like that system breaks down the moment that you choose to just kind of take it very seriously and not let them get away with it as just all in good fun, and just it's like what you were saying, the woman on the CNN panel, where it's like, okay, if it's all in good fun, do it right now for us, like let's see,
Yeah.
like so
It's,
I like
how do
that
you do
kind of
that though when
stuff.
the president's jokingly saying we should annex an entire country, you know? Like, what do we,
Well, like I was asked about this the other day, and it's like, okay, fine. So what are you doing, Mr. President? Annexing Canada? How's that going? Are you making calls to the Canadian Parliament? Which politicians are on side? Is there a
yeah,
bill before Congress about like the Annexation of Canada Act? You know, same with
describe
like
me the
Vice
path
President Vance.
forward. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, or it's like Marco Rubio, you know, the great distinguished Secretary of State. It's like, okay, Secretary Rubio, how is this diplomatic initiative going? And it is government policy to annex the Dominion of Canada and make it the 51st state. How is that going? What phone calls have you been making to the foreign minister? Right, like you can like just not let people get away with saying stupid shit and just thinking that it's all going to roll over because we only take this administration like semi seriously, or only take them what is the line, you know, we take them seriously but not literally. No, like maybe we should do both, take
Yeah.
them seriously and literally, right?
Oh, I like it. I like this strategy. Okay, that's good. That doesn't just speak to the groomer thing. That really does speak to all of it, and I hope that is something that people start adopting. But I'm gonna push it. I'm gonna push piss politics into everyone's face. I got a couple more chats here. Zane Rossler, $5.
Nice.
Thank you so much. Just got into you, soy. Watched JJ for years. Love your videos. I do want to comment on that. You followed me on Twitter. I was like, oh, everyone's been talking about this guy. I should reach out. And I was like, I've never seen any of his stuff. And then I started watching the videos you sent me, and I'm like, I recognize this. And then I go back to my
Yes.
like history, and it's like 7 years ago I watched like your Simpsons video, and I'm like, I fucking love this. Why didn't I
Oh.
subscribe? And I just think it's so funny that technically I have also watched JJ for years. I just didn't know it. But yeah,
Mm.
everyone go check out all of JJ's pop culture stuff. It's great. I loved your Mandela Effect video and your Simpsons
Oh.
does not predict the future video, because they are like the
Oh.
epitome of, yeah, hey, stupid, like this is so fucking obvious Facebook tier bullshit, and like you're falling for just like caveman like ideology. Like you just think about this for
Yes.
two
Yes.
seconds, and people do it to me. People go back to my Trump predictions video about like the future, and they're like, wow, this aged like wine, like you got everything right. I'm like, I just listened to what he said. Like this is the same thing back then. I'm not predicting any of this. I'm not, you know, like Simpsons didn't predict the cultural zeitgeist of 2020. Just everything's bullshit, and it hasn't changed. Like it's the same stuff over and over and over
Yes.
again. It's just unfortunate that people think I'm like some prophet when I say like, hey, Trump's going to pass tariffs and it's going to make prices go up, when it's like he's saying he's going to do it, you know. But
Yes.
I appreciate the credit that they give me. Another one here from Film Nerdy. Thank you so much. 10 euros, I think. Hey, enjoy your work, Soy. JJ, in the UK, we have the Reform Party trying to outdo
Mm.
the Conservatives. It's being compared how it was in Canada. Is there anything we should learn from this?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, we're two very different countries, and you know, the other than the fact that they have the same name, and I guess you know they're sort of running. They're both sort of like for people that don't know what he's talking about, right? So it's like in the 1990s, there was two sort of right of center parties in Canada. One was called the Reform Party, and one was called the Conservative. One was actually called the Progressive Conservative Party versus the Reform Party, and and then eventually the sort of like the Reform Party kind of conquered the Progressive Conservative Party, and then they merged into what we have now, which is the Conservative Party of Canada, which became a thing in 2003,
Mhm.
and that's now sort of the dominant sort of center right option in Great Britain. They have the Tory party, which has been around for like, you know, hundreds of years. And then they have sort of the Nigel Farage medicine show that has,
UKIP, yeah.
you know, yeah, which was the instigator of Brexit. And then it became UKIP, and then it became some other things. And now it's called Reform. And, you know, Nigel Farage is obviously like very much sort of like the Trump of Great Britain. And, you know, his popularity seems to be rising. And his big sort of political strategy is that, you know, his party is going to knock off the kind of weak and feckless Tory party that is now, I'm sure, completely not incidentally run by a black woman, which you know, some folks do not seem to care much for. And so I don't know, like maybe that's a strategy that's going to work for old Nigel Farage. Maybe his sort of populist sort of shtick will take some traction at a time when the Tory party is led by, you know, I don't know much about this woman. I don't know if she's considered a squish or whatnot, but you know, I don't know. But you know, but in Canada, the Reform Party was is just very different. Like the Reform Party of Canada was based on like this is even like too nerdy to even get into, but it's like it's just so like in sort of like late 80s, early 90s Canada, like there was a sense that like Western Canada was kind of being passed over, and that there was too much economic power concentrated in like the axis of Toronto, Montreal, and Ottawa. And so like there was a kind of movement of sort of like conservative populism that was growing out of mostly sort of disillusioned Albertans and, you know, people from Saskatchewan and Manitoba and all that. And that kind of led a sort of reorganization of the Canadian political system in the long term that resulted in the West getting more power. It's just like it's too boring, right? It's like it's not analogous. Like you can't compare like 1980s Canada and all sort of like the weird
To
idiosyncratic geographic anxieties that defined politics in this country at that time with, modern post-Brexit 21st century Great Britain and all of the unique, anxieties that dominate
Yeah.
the politics of
You
that
can make
country,
some like
which I don't even
sweeping
know because I'm not British.
generalizations about like, economic anxieties, maybe immigration, but like it's just like is the ultimate
Yeah.
utility of that should be like is there like something we can do about it that like is reflective of how we learned what happened in the past, and probably not. It's too different. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Well, it's just like I don't know. There's because you see this a lot now when we talk about sort of politics around the world, right? It's like everybody had there always has to be like a Trump of some country, right?
Yeah,
And then you just try to like understand everything that's happening
through
around the
that
world through a kind
lens.
of
Yeah.
crude analogy to American politics.
Do you play video
And I think
games?
this is, I don't really. I'm not a
Okay. Well,
gamer.
there's this like exactly what you're talking about when everyone says it's the Dark Souls of, it's the Skyrim of,
Yeah,
and it's
yeah,
like no,
yeah,
it's something else, and you have to talk about it that way. But people want to
yeah,
compartmentalize everything in the context of things that are very popular and what they know, and so it's like, oh, Reform Party,
yeah,
I know that word. Is it the same? Like,
yeah,
how can I like navigate this? And it's like maybe like just hyper focus on what actually is happening and what the context of what they're doing is, and like what they're pushing, and like maybe you can take some historical lessons. But yeah, it is very very different, and it's like what are you supposed to
yeah.
do? Hmm.
We're just too. I mean, we are like Great Britain and Canada. Like, there's some similarities, but we're two different countries whose political sort of courses of action have been dictated by different things. And like
But you're both
Brexit is just,
equally inferior to America. So if anything, you're more
well,
alike than you are
obviously,
different.
yeah.
Yeah. So, wait, you guys
I mean, I
have
think that
Canadian
actually, I think
bacon.
that
They have beans on toast. You all have shitty breakfast.
well,
All right. So
and I mean, and where no one's talking about making Great Britain the 51st state, are they? So
it's too far
how
away. We
great
don't
can
have
they
no
be?
nobody has time for that. All right. Well, a bunch of chats have come in since then. Okay, Emperor Tiger Star, thank you so much for the $5. As someone from the Bible Belt, I'm sorry, where most kids were forced and pressured to go to church from birth, the LGBT groomer narrative is hilariously ironic. Yeah, I do see that a lot. Where I have a lot of friends in the South, in the Midwest, and they deal with all sorts of crazy like indoctrination and this like social pressure to not step out of line of the church, to not like be progressive, to not be gay, and I live in the most progressive area in California, and like I've seen like some outliers, but for the most part, like no one's pressuring anyone to be gay. No one's pressuring anyone to be trans. Like there's not this like the pressure to not be Republican is there for sure, but it's more of just this like, hey, like be whatever you want to be and this is okay, and we're just letting you kind of know. It's a very like a hands-off approach, I think, in most cases, or at least that's what it was like when I was going through school. Even for like a sex ed thing where it's like, hey, like we're not teaching you how to have gay sex, we're just saying like, just so you know, you might be this, that's fine. And like it was so like I think agreeable in how you might like teach someone about all these different ideologies that people hate, and it's crazy to call them groomers. I just don't see that at all. But yeah, versus like I see people like beaten in church for not remembering which verse in the Bible, like they get the little rap on the hands with the ruler, and it's just yeah, it is ironic. I don't know if do you have any experience with any
Well,
of
I mean,
this
like,
or
I mean, the thing that I was sort of thinking about is just like the degree to which a lot of, particular like these kind of like right wing intellectuals who kind of give cover and credence to the MAGA movement. A lot of them are Catholic. A lot of them are Catholic converts even because they've decided that the Catholic Church is the most intellectually vigorous flavor of Christianity. JD Vance is one example,
Mhm.
right? And yet these people have never really reckoned with, I think, a lot of the skeletons in their own closet as far as the Catholic Church's problem with groomers, right? Like this is something that I feel like lay people are very hyper aware of, but I feel like there's a lot of conservatives that have never fully kind of like reckoned with that and what that
Yeah.
says
Well,
about
because they're not out
the
of it
nature
yet.
of
They
the
don't even realize, like they're still in that bubble. So it's not like, oh, I was groomed. It's like,
mm,
I don't even like, this is the world. Like, I think I know a lot of people that are still in that bubble. So I get it.
mm.
But yeah, I don't know how you break that out, break them out of that. It's a hard one for sure, especially when it's all you've known your whole life. Oh, real quick, do you know who Max Stirner is? They said $2. Thank you. Soy, will you be an honored JJ Cord perma guest? And I think they linked me to your Discord. Are you
Okay.
friends with your mods? Is that a thing?
What was the person's name?
Max Stirner's ego.
Um, I don't want to humiliate him
By
if I
saying I
should
don't, I
know him, but
shouldn't have
I know.
asked. Maybe it goes by
I mean,
a different name, you know,
maybe
like
maybe I'd recognize the avatar if I saw it. But
it's the guy from Lazy Town, the bad guy, the horrible like we are
oh,
number one, you know. What
the
I don't remember his
purple
name.
pie man
Yeah,
character.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Maybe I don't want to embarrass him, but he's
It's just,
asking me to be in a
yeah.
Discord, which he knows how I feel
Yeah.
about that. Mahalan Miller, $10. Thank you so much. Things are getting so bad here in the U.S. Elon Musk has cooed the Treasury Department and illegally has control over the digital portals that control all spending. We effectively have dictatorship. We briefly covered this. I don't think people are making a big deal enough about what is happening now, but like the whole federal freeze, like Trump is not allowed to have power over every single federal fund. Like he's not allowed to say we're not funding Medicaid, we're not funding all these social programs, we're not funding foreign aid. You can't just turn that off like a switch. And now it seems like Elon Musk, who's not even like an official, has the switch. What do you make of that? Like, are we not being
Yeah.
alarmist enough? Like, is it alarmist? Like, what is happening?
Yeah. No, I think we should be more alarmist about this. And again, this is just like it shows the failure of conservatism, right? Like you can sort of read columns by George Will in the Washington Post and all of that, which really sort of emphasize the importance of like, you know, separation of powers and how the founders intended the executive to be, you know, co-equal with the legislative branch. And no, but it's like that whole system has been ruined now by the Trump personality cult, right? The Republicans in Congress, despite controlling both chambers, have no interest in sort of exercising their political power as constitutionally granted to, you know, hold the executive to account for what it's doing, right? Congress controls the spending. Congress decides, you know, Congress authorizes executive branch programs that have to be, you know, implemented by the federal government. So unless Congress has rescinded its approval for various national programs, you know, the administrative state has no right to sort of unilaterally revoke them, right? This is the problem, is that a lot of these kind of tech bros, they want the government to be run as their companies are run. You know, they want there to be the
Move fast,
CEO
break
president who can
things.
just
Yeah, like just
and
go
just like
in
and
and
dictate
control.
everything from on high, you know, because it's like when Elon became head of Twitter, like he first thing he did was like fire a whole bunch of employees, and that's what he can do as a CEO. But you know, uh America is not Twitter, right? America is a constitutional republic that has checks and balances and different
Thank
branches of government,
God.
and yeah, and America has protocols and procedures and all this kind of stuff, right? And it,
For
in
now, it
theory,
seems like we're
it's
not.
been
Yeah, we're kind of like doing away
well,
with all that, and like no one's really challenging it,
and it's
or like
Congress. It's Congress's fault. Like as much as Elon is a bad guy, it's like he can't get away with it unless the rest of the government, you know,
just lets it
allows him
happen.
to. And the founders explicitly anticipated this, and that's why they have multiple branches of government. But if all of the other branches of government, if the Supreme Court and the Congress just decide to capitulate into the almighty God King President Emperor for life, well then the system we in the sort of collective sense have failed the system. Like people
Yeah.
are failing their own constitution if they're not playing by its rules.
Yeah, I'm having a whole debate on this on Thursday of like how this is a constitutional crisis, and I feel like people aren't like the fact that it's a debate is insane to me. It's like there's another
Yeah.
side to this. Like you're just like I wish like at least if they're gonna stop me into the dirt and like do this fascist takeover, just tell me. Just be like, look, yeah, we're doing the fascist takeover. It's like, okay, I'm gonna fight against you. Cool. Thank you for establishing that we're on the same page. Don't gaslight me while you're fucking beating my head in. Like, come on. Like this is
Yeah.
like. But Mahalan Miller, another $5 follow up, and this is what we're saying. The problem is the Republicans in Congress don't have a problem with what Elon is doing. They want this to happen. They support this. Like, yeah, like people have said this before, and I totally agree. People would be totally fine with a dictatorial king as long as they did all the things they want. And we're kind of seeing like,
Yeah.
oh, well, once I stress test these rules and it doesn't matter as much, yeah, that is what's going to happen. They're just going to be like, oh, cool, they're doing what I want. I don't give a shit about the rules. Like, just circumvent
Yeah.
them, whatever.
Yeah.
And real quick, Mr.
Yeah.
Mod, his name on Discord is Hussar.
Okay.
Hussar.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, you do
I know
know. Okay.
Hussar,
Cool.
yeah.
Cool.
Okay.
You should.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna assume you do, but also if you don't, you should not anyway, just in case, because otherwise he's gonna feel
No,
bad.
no, no. I know.
Okay. Good. Yeah. No. I feel like I'm going crazy. We talked about this. We could litigate this into the ground, but it is like it's not a 2016 moment where yeah, it's crazy that Donald Trump's president and he's kind of like doing stuff I don't like, but for the most part, he really did toe the Republican Party line. Right now, it's like I like it's been 2 weeks and I legitimately feel like in a year from now, like China could be the world power that is able to dictate how the world works in the same way we were last year. I don't want that. Like as much as I
Yeah.
don't like American tendrils reaching into other countries and doing bad things, we do a lot of really good things. And the fact that overnight we switched off U.S. humanitarian aid under the guise of this is wasteful, and you look and it's like, oh, we were preventing people in Africa from dying of AIDS, and now we're not
Yeah.
doing that anymore because, well, why should we help them? It's like, what the fuck? Like, you're just gonna let these people die? Like, that's insane. That's insane to me, and it's just happening on a whim because the people who don't even understand how the government works are now in power and are just like, take all these things we took for granted that no one really knew about for decades are all just going to come apart. And then I think what's going to happen is this is exactly what happened with Twitter is you break down all the rules, you throw out all the trust and safety team, it turns to shit, all the servers break, and then you're like, wait a minute, there was a reason for all of that, and you build it back up slowly, and then you
Yeah.
take credit for it. And like, I hope that we build that stuff back up, but it really does seem like the stupid like libertarians might get mad at me for saying this, but every libertarian I ever talk to, it's like you start off from this like, oh, personal freedom, everything's great, no government, and then you slowly realize that why all the regulations exist, and you like reinvent them, and then you're back to where you started
Yeah.
when you deconstructed
Yeah.
everything. But it's
No.
insane. I feel like I'm
No.
going crazy.
No,
I have
I
Trump
agree with
derangement
you, and I
syndrome.
feel
I'm
like
fully TDS.
no, I feel like, like this is, and when I at the beginning of the stream where I talked about my sort of like how I've evolved over my 40 years of life and how like my political opinions have sort of matured in some ways, and definitely one of them is I do think I have more respect for government as a sort of force of stability and order in the world, right? I think that when I was young, there was always this kind of temptation. I think a lot of conservatives have to kind of, and I think it's a very distinctly sort of American, of the broad sort of continental sense temptation of to kind of lean into the more libertarian side. And it's like, well, what is government for anyway? Who really needs government? It's just a bunch of bossy know-it-alls, and who cares, right? And that kind of stuff. And it's very easy to kind of lean that way because it makes a sort of instinctive sense, I suppose, if you're kind of ill-informed, as you are often when you're young, which is probably why libertarianism is so appealing to like 20-year-olds.
Yeah.
But like as you go on, you sort of realize that this thing that we call a civilization is a fragile thing, and it requires certain sort of foundational pillars to hold it up. And government and all of the different things that government does is an important one, and that you can't just kind of knock out one of those pillars and assume everything to be fine. It's the same with
Yeah.
like it's just the same with like just kind of like broad kind of I think like bourgeois norms and sort of sensibilities like manners and protocols and respect for procedure and order and tradition and these kinds of things, right? Like these are kind of like small c conservative values as I've kind of understood them. And I think that the problem now is that you kind of have the worst of both worlds in MAGA, where you kind of have this like really like anti-government libertarian destroy it all, fire everybody, no regulations sort of side. And then you also kind of have this like chaotic anti-bourgeois mentality as far as like social decorum goes, where it's like swear, be vulgar, engage in conspiracy theories, lie openly, troll, dabble with neo-Nazi symbolism and all this kind of stuff. Who the hell cares, right? Like, and then when you get those two things together, you get this kind of like just social civilizational sort of arsonism, which is really like the challenge of our time. Like just the idea, like you really do have people, as Steve Bannon once said, like burn it all down. Like that is literally the mentality. And I think that a lot
Yeah.
of us are starting to realize that it all is something that has a lot going for it, and
There
that
was a
maybe we
reason it
don't
was
want to
there.
burn it all
Yeah.
down.
Wait a second.
Precisely,
I
right?
live in this house. I don't want to burn it
Yeah,
down. Hold on.
yeah, no, and but I mean, like,
Oh,
it's like that kind of sort of arsonistic impulse we can all be tempted by it in good times, right? When things are going relatively well, it's easy to be like, what does this stuff matter? It's fun to entertain kind of like fantasies of chaos and destruction and like revolution and all of this kind of stuff. And people on the right, people on the left, like everybody sort of can be tempted by that. And I think now a lot of people are realizing that no, civilization is important, and like I said, like these foundational pillars do matter, and we maybe don't want to be so cavalier about chipping away at them.
that is my one hope is that in this arsonist political arsonism that you've described, the voters realize like, hey, wait a second, this fucking sucks. Like, yeah, you can talk about how tariffs are so great and they get me all these things I want, but I'm still hurting when I go to the grocery store, and I'm still hurting when I go to the gas station, and I don't care what you're saying. You're fucking my life up. And like in the same way, like like the reason I'm so doomer on climate change is because I think that the actual consequences that really do hurt the everyday person won't happen until it's too late. I hope that the consequences of what I hope, not what I hope, but what I see happening with these pillars being burned down are very immediate, and people see it very like quickly, like shit, this needs to change. This is not okay. But I don't know. And I always say this: I will capitulate if this works out and America is great again. Fuck it, I'm on board. You know, I'll be on the Trump train. I'll be driving it. All right. Even then, I would still have to be within the Trump train, telling them to be nicer to all the gay people and the immigrants and all that. But hey, if it makes America great again, you know, maybe you're right. It's just you know, very empirically not true based on everything I've seen. So let's see what happens. You know, the crazy train keeps on chugging. Film nerdy, €5. So many gross Europeans in my chat. Do you think that America needs to retire pardons and appointing judges, given how polarizing things are? As an outsider, it always seems strange to me. I think that you are seeing an abuse of pardons and abuse of appointments, but I don't think that means we should get rid of it. What do you think about that?
I think there should definitely be a constitutional amendment reigning in the pardon power, right? I mean, all countries have pardons. Like, this is a normal sort of aspect of, I think, any good functioning government. You know, my father actually was a parole officer for many years, so like I understand the virtue of being able to sort of give people a path to integrate back into society.
Yeah.
So, but it does seem like just the idea that a president can pardon anyone for anything at any moment, can even pardon like enormous like swatches of people, like all of the January 6th people, you know, or it's like, because it's like there is no limit, right? Like the Constitution does not prescribe any sort of boundaries around it. Like in theory, like a president could pardon every single American for every crime ever, right? Like, which just seems preposterous,
Jesus, right? He pardons every sin going forward. Yeah.
No, it pardons every sin. And it's like you wonder, like, and because especially since the Supreme Court says the pardon power could never be questioned, could a president like pardon every future crime? Like, no American shall ever be held accountable for anything they ever do ever again.
The forever
like a preemptive
purge,
pardon, right?
Yeah,
like,
that would.
Yeah, the forever purge, right?
Yeah,
I definitely think
yeah, it needs to be reined in. But also, like what you were saying is like it's not just this wide swath, which I do think is bad, because you look, even Joe Biden did a bunch like right on the way out, and like some of those were like not okay. Like he was pardoning people that maybe like, you know, were nonviolent, and that's fine. But like then you were seeing these people that like probably should still be in jail. And it's hard because he's not looking through each individual and their rap sheet and like whether or not they deserve this. It's like hey, here's like a list of 10,000 people, and then like just sign this, right? And that's kind of, it seems what Trump's doing. And like, yeah, like it should be one of these like, oh, this exclusive person may have broke the law, but in the long run they are a good for this country, some sort of thing, like an Edward Snowden type, maybe. Like that's like a person, one singular person, regardless of your opinion on it. That seems to be more of what it is for, not hey, every single person who committed this crime, you're good, you know, like that. That does need to be reined in. I really do agree with you.
No, I mean, and so you can imagine like the way out sort of like a modest amendment could work. They could sort of say like, you know, the president shall only pardon individuals, no classes of people, no groups of people, you know, and that that maybe the president cannot pardon his blood relatives or things like this, right? Like, and certainly like cannot pardon himself. I think that's worth putting on paper too. Presidents cannot pardon themselves.
He doesn't need to anymore. He's got immunity for all official acts, which
true.
encompasses every nebulous thing you can think of. So yeah, but yes, he probably should not be able to pardon himself. You know, back in the day, you know, and I can say this to you because I'm an older, seasoned person, we had to get the next president to pardon the first president. Nixon had to wait. He didn't just pardon himself. And that's how we used to do it. We used to be a real country, and not anymore.
It's true. And then like, and President Ford like went on television and like gave this like very like heartfelt speech about how his conscience was racked by the, you know, the difficulty of this monumental decision.
Yeah.
Whereas like now,
I'm so sorry that I'm getting this guy away from all these crimes. And if only they knew.
Well, it's just
looking
like,
forward, all they had to do was just say like, "Fucking yeah, I'm gonna do whatever the fuck I want, bitch." like yeah, like if only they knew.
Yeah.
Ugh, Christ.
What was the other thing that the
the other thing that the chatter asked?
I feel like
it was also judges being appointed, like how we're getting these like very partisan judges, these like loyalists being appointed, where like I don't remember her name, but the one who kind of like threw out the documents case, which was like, in my opinion, was like very cut and dry.
Oh yeah,
like, this is like
Eileen Cannon.
Cannon, Judge Cannon, or like I mean, even like it's hard to say this for sure, but like the Supreme Court, it really does seem like it's become incredibly partisan to this point where it's kind of,
Yeah.
I don't know if it always was, probably was, but like at this point, it's like, all right, you've appointed what, 3 judges now, and he's probably going to get
Yeah.
4 or 5, and it's like,
Yeah.
okay, so you have to rule on this case that decides whether or not this guy's essentially king, and he is the one who got you all this job. Like how what the fuck? Like, how are you supposed to be impartial here? Your wife, Alito's wife is literally like a QAnoner, like January 6er person.
Yeah.
Like Judge Thomas's wife, like might have helped orchestrate it. Like this, it's crazy. Like, and
Yeah.
what do you do? Like, do you not appoint people anymore? Do you say the president doesn't have that power? Like, this is clearly a violation of what the
Well,
intention is. It's not a check and balance anymore. It's all a Trump pyramid, right? So, what the hell do you do?
America actually, I think, has a better system of appointing judges than most countries do already, right?
Okay.
Like the fact that, like in Canada, for instance, the prime minister just gets to install whoever he wants as judges and there's no oversight at all.
Wow.
Whereas
Okay.
in America, at least they have to go through these confirmation hearings and all that.
Hmm.
But again, it's just like it's a reflection of the abdication of Congress's responsibility. The founders can set up this brilliant system that has all these checks and balances. But if the Republicans in the Senate just feel like they're just going to blindly rubber stamp every judge that they put forward, no matter how unqualified or sort of scandal plagued they are, then it doesn't matter,
Yeah, it
right?
doesn't
Like
matter
the
what the
people
rules are if they're gonna bend them so much they might as well not exist. Yeah, there's not really like a new
well,
rule you can write at that point. But
I think it would be I think it would be good if there was a mandatory retirement age for Supreme Court
that'd be
judges,
nice.
as there
I'd
are
like
in
that. Yeah.
most states, right? I
Hmm.
mean, this is sort of like ghoulish Death Watch, where it's just kind of like, oh, who's got, like with Ruth Bader Ginsburg near the end, where it's just like, oh God, can she just like hang on, like just a few more supplements,
like
a few more trips to the gym, it's just like,
is it Apocalypse Now? The scene where the guy's like running to the helicopter, getting shot at by the Viet Cong. Like you could do it, Ruth.
yeah,
Just one more year, Ruth. Like just riddled with bullets. Like oh
no.
God, that's not how
Because
it
like
should work.
and you feel that right, like you feel that way about, like right now with like Sonia Sotomayor, right? Like because she has diabetes, like she's not in the best health, but she's, I guess, got to struggle it on. And just like imagine like the psychological toll that must take on the judges themselves, where it's like, I must not die, I must keep this job for life because the stakes are so incredibly high.
Yeah,
Like
that shouldn't be how it works. It's not. It
it's
shouldn't be this like death.
no,
Yeah, death watch, vultures circling them, and like as soon as they die, we get a 40-year appointment. It's insane.
yeah,
You're right. It should. Why not have them be terms? Because the whole point of it was like, hey, let's put these like I was gonna say grand wizards, but that's not the right word. You know what I mean? Like these wisdomful people
yeah, yeah,
that like like they're so wise and impartial, the Grand Council, and it's like, no, it's
yes,
just a bunch of people with opinions, just like you and me.
yeah,
And unfortunately, they're
yeah,
incredibly partisan sometimes, and you have to just deal with that and contend with that. So maybe they shouldn't be in power for 40 years. Maybe, maybe that should be the case.
yeah.
But yeah, I guess we are going to play the hey, can we cure diabetes in the next 3 years game? Because I really don't want a 7-2 Supreme Court for the rest of my life. That's not really what I'm looking
Jeez
forward
Louise.
to. Mahlon, thank you again for the $5. You're just dumping money on this chat. Quite frankly, with the power
No
Elon
problem.
and Trump has now, I think it is within the realm of possibility that we will not have an election in 2026. What do you think about that? Like, as alarmist as I am being with everything kind of breaking down right now, I don't know if we're going to get rid of elections. I do think that the elections might be so meddled with not like cheating necessarily, but like scumfuckery, like type of gerrymandering, like voter suppression, like that could happen with
Yeah.
all the power they have. That maybe Democrats won't win on local levels or even on a greater level for a while. No matter how invigorated they get, that is entirely possible. But I don't know if we'll get rid of elections. What are your thoughts?
I think I think that these days no one should sort of restrain their pessimistic imaginations, right? Because I just think that we've seen that like just so many things are clearly on the table, and these people are very shameless and are very comfortable really sort of like testing the limits and getting away with things after they do test the limits. So
Yeah, I don't
I
want to
don't know,
be in
like
one of those
if
compilations, where it's like Donald Trump will never be president, and then like cue the
yeah,
cue
yeah,
the clip. So it's like, yeah, they're not going to get rid of elections. Like they might. I'll say that. I don't think it'll
no,
happen,
I
and I
mean,
hope it won't. But like it could.
yeah. I mean, again, like as the big America simp that I am, the big founding fathers simp that I am, like one of the genius sort of aspects of the American system that I do think is a check on this is just like the existence of the states and the facts that the states administer elections independently of the federal government, right? If elections in my country, in Canada, elections are administered by the federal government, which in theory would make it easier if you got a bad government in power to sort of rig the system, right?
Hmm.
But the fact that these states, run the elections independently, that means that even if the state governments are crooked, they're much more likely to be crooked in states that the Republicans were already going to win anyway, right? Like the fact, like because like I remember this like came up right with some of the Secretary of State elections in the last midterms, where it's like, oh, some real QAnon lunatic got elected Secretary of State of Alabama or something, and it's like, okay, fine, rig the Alabama elections. It's not like that was a competitive state to begin with.
Yeah.
Whereas like the swing states are like Pennsylvania, Georgia, and these kind of places are still in the hands of sort of saner people, which does make me a little bit more optimistic. But the problem, though, is I think would be like if Trump came out tomorrow and said like elections are bullshit, like would people in his own side hold him accountable
Of
for it?
course
I don't
not. Of
think
course
there's
not.
really
There's not a
no, right?
single thing you could
Right?
say that they'd hold him accountable for, right?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
same with
So
like if he said like the Constitution's a big load of crap. Like would
he
people
said he
push
would
back against
suspend
him?
it.
No, they'd
He said he would suspend it.
yeah,
No one
well,
cared. All
exactly.
these diehard constitutionalists, they didn't give a shit. They were like, yeah, no,
Yeah,
either he didn't mean it or he did mean it, and that's good. And it's like it doesn't matter. Like you said, he's the amorphous. He's the oh my god, am I about to make a Harry Potter reference? What's the thing that like Trent the Bogart? It's whatever like your worst fear is. It's that, but the positive. God,
yeah,
no one clip that.
yeah.
I hate Harry Potter reference. I'm a dumb lib. I hate myself for even suggesting that I read those books 26 times. Um,
Yeah. Someone claimed that they were an ally just a few minutes ago, but now
I'm
I'm
not an
starting to
ally.
wonder.
I'm pro gay and anti Harry Potter. And if a gay person likes Harry Potter, they're a bad gay. Okay, no, I like Harry Potter. I just think it's overused.
Yes.
Zane Kane, thank you, Khan for the 199 euros. Should Canada move away from the USA and join the EU? I don't know if they're joking, but I have heard, maybe not because of the tariff thing, that there might be some sort of coalition to kind of move away from the American hegemon between Canada and the EU. Have you heard anything about this? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, it's like some washed up former prime minister of Belgium was like squawking about this on social media. I have a Belgian friend and I was like asking him like, is this guy legit in any way? And he's like,
Some
no.
dude,
He's like,
yeah.
he's like the Nigel Farage, I guess, of like Belgian politics or something. Like someone
Hmm.
who just like wants a lot of attention and says stupid provocative things. Like no, that's never going to happen in a bazillion years. Like Canada and the US are so deeply economically integrated, and that's been Canada's competitive advantage in the world is Saudi Arabia has oil, Brazil has coffee or whatever, and Canada has the US, right? Like our whole economic system is based around our
You're like
proximity to the
we're a
United States.
commodity. Like we have, yeah, our number one
It's just
export is the
it's
U.S.
well, it's like a quarter of Canada's GDP is just based on trade with the US, right? Like 80% of all of our goods go to the US. Like this is just what our economic model is based on. And that's because we're right next door to the US. Like it's something like $1 billion worth of goods just go in trucks across the border every day, right? Like geographic proximity is what has made Canada the wealthy, successful country it is. And we are not going to replace that with, putting stuff on, steamships and sending it over to Italy or whatever. Like that's just not going to be the nature. Like Canada, like for example, like Canada trades an enormous amount of oil with the United States. Like 70% of all America's foreign oil comes from Canada, right? And that's because since we're next door neighbors, we can like literally build, big iron pipes that ship the oil from the wells in Alberta down to refineries in Louisiana or whatever, right? Like it's a geographic reality. We're not going to build pipes that go all the way to,
across the Atlantic. Yeah.
Holland, right? Like it's never going to work. Like you cannot substitute it.
Hmm.
Canadians
No, that
always
makes sense.
have
I,
this.
I I think it's just like one of those
Canadian,
like not realistic type things. No matter
yeah,
how much you need to replace it, and it looks like it might not even happen with the whole like tariff thing. Like
yeah,
it looks like it was just a bargaining tool. But let's see. Who knows? The dice are being rolled every day.
yeah.
Okay are you with an incredibly adversarial question? I saw this pop up a bunch of times. I think this person's
All
got
right,
a hate boner for you. Are you
all
are you
right.
ready
Bring
for
it up.
this?
Bring it up.
Okay.
Or bring
Sarah
it up.
Dog
Yeah.
says, "Hey JJ, why do you lie by omission as like your
Hmm.
primary rhetorical strat?" What do you
Hmm.
think of that? Do you think you lie by omission?
Well, I don't think so. I mean, unless somebody can bring up a specific
Yeah,
example. I mean,
source, Sarah Dog. Hello, source. Give us a fucking source in chat
lie
right
by
now.
omission.
Lie by omission. Yeah. Are you
I
lying right now? Are
don't
you
know. I
actually
mean,
not telling me something?
I don't know. I mean, a lot of so like I'll engage with this in a sort of good faith way. Is that definitely? I mean, if this I'm just completely speculating wildly here. Is that if you are a Canadian who talks to Americans about Canadian stuff, there will often be a lot of sort of resentment for you on those terms because they'll feel like you're not giving the Americans the full picture. And because Americans are such a wonderful credulous people, they're very inclined to believe anything a foreigner
I
tells
feel
them,
very
right? Which
patronized right now, but okay.
it's true though. I mean, like this is some like I mean, Americans have this stereotype of being these like arrogant know-it-alls, but I think if anything, it's kind of in the opposite direction. That I think Americans can be a little too credulous every time there's like an articulate foreigner telling them how things are, right? Americans are always like, oh, yeah, that's so true. Oh, so right. Oh, that's so interesting, right? And so Canadians, I think, can be a little sensitive. And sometimes people say this, like they say, like, oh, don't listen to JJ McCullough, Americans. He's not a good representative of Canada. He's lying by omission, or he's only telling you half the story because he wants to, reinforce his understanding of the way that Canada is and Canadian politics are and all
Hmm.
that. So it's like,
Yeah, so it's
there's
like you
this,
make your whole like Canadian iceberg video, and someone takes malice with the fact that you portrayed something in a way that they think is dishonest, even though that's how you view Canada, and they're like, "Oh, he's pushing an agenda," where it's more just like, "No, this is literally
yeah.
just how I see the world. It's not a lie by omission. I'm just that's not I'm
Well,
not you." Like, is it more of like a that sort of
you'll
situation?
never
You think?
I guess. I mean, you'll never satisfy everybody, right? And like, one man's sort of lie by omission is just another man's, kind of sense of what is worth knowing, right? It's like I try very hard to be as objective as I can. I try to present an accurate picture of everything I talk about. I try to, focus on what matters and leave out what doesn't matter. And obviously, not everybody can express every thought and every fact on every topic all of the time. To be a presenter of information requires sort of curating what you present. It requires making editorial decisions.
Oh yeah.
And I
No,
feel like I
I'm
generally,
biased as hell, and I don't try to hide it. Like, yeah, I can try to be objective and realistic and listen to the other side, but like all these people are like, I really like your moderate take. I'm like, motherfucker, I'm so progressive. Like, I'm never gonna pretend to be some like moderate. Like I'm not gonna lie to you. Like, I despise so much of the politics on the other side. That doesn't mean I hate the people. I hate the things that happen from it, but I'm never going to tell you that I'm like some reasonable, rational, middle of the road voice because that's not who I am.
yeah.
And yeah, like I didn't get that vibe from watching your stuff that like I felt like you were lying to me. But hey, who knows? Maybe I'm gonna go read the Canadian Wikipedia page and everything you said was a total lie. Speaking of uncomfortable, first let's cap that off with
Okay.
a part two thing to say, hey Soy Pill, tell JJ I think he's hot. He thinks you're hot. So just to wrap up that little adversarial comment, really
Beautiful.
quickly. Speaking of piss politics, I really have to use the restroom. I've been drinking. Are you comfortable with me leaving me with your chat or leaving you with my chat?
That's fine.
Okay.
Hold on. Let me load it up on the old because I'm not using YouTube right now, so I can't see the chat. But I will have to do that to be able to see what people are asking of me.
Okay. Do you want me to send you the link right now?
Okay, here we go.
You got
No,
it?
no, I see it. I see it right now.
Okay,
Okay,
cool.
I've got it on. Yep.
Don't say
Just
any
let me just turn it
slurs.
to mute.
Don't yell at
I
anyone,
won't.
but everyone,
I
JJ
won't.
owns you for the next however long it takes me to go to the restroom.
Okay. Let me take a gander here and see what people are yapping about. I appreciate that you guys have been sort of thoughtful and patient with me as this guest, as this interloper into your little world. But the problem is that I am such a boomer that I cannot figure out how to make anything work. So right now the YouTube thing is kind of crashing in a weird way and is not letting me see the chats. But okay, here we go. All right, let's see. So Cryptic Scriber says, JJ, will you do any videos on Australia and some interesting things that happen there politically? Probably not. I don't know a lot about Australian politics. I'm always a little sensitive about weighing into foreign politics just because I can't speak confidently enough, and I like to speak confidently about topics. And foreign politics, I mean, I guess I could try. I made a video about Indian politics once. Hold on, there's a super chat here from Maholon Miller, $10. Not to be too doomer, but we here in the US don't really get much of a say in our country during normal times. But especially during these times, they will ignore even a majority of they will ignore even a majority of angry citizens. Hmm. I don't know. I don't know if I necessarily believe that. I think that even Trump would be sensitive if he kind of really felt that there was a huge majority of Canadians or Americans against him. I mean, maybe he would be just delusional and just start lying his way out of it. But I do think that, public pressure matters in democracy, and I do think politicians are sensitive to whether or not they are being liked or not. This person says, does JJ McCullough think the president can ignore the Supreme Court if Congress is on their side? That seems scary, what the president of Andrew Jackson said. Well, I mean, I think that in some ways Trump doesn't really have to worry about this problem, because I do think the Supreme Court is on his side, and is not only on his side, but it's just like, as a matter of principle, committed to this idea that, presidents should be all powerful and basically get what they want and not have a lot of uppity judges telling them what they can and can't do. So I think that, the threat that the Supreme Court presents to Trump, to the point where we'd have to worry about, Trump ignoring a Supreme Court. I think if they say it was like a super liberal Supreme Court, then I do think that would be a very real and present danger, that you would have Trump just flat out saying, okay, go ahead, try to enforce it. This was actually something that JD Vance said in his previous life. He was like, on one of a podcast that he went on, he was saying, like, the Supreme Court says it, say, let them enforce it, right? And which is obviously a very dangerous thing to entertain. You're back.
I am back. How was it? Did they treat you nicely?
I was fine.
Okay.
I did my best.
Apparently my roommate...
The chat's going wild.
Yeah? Okay, well, real quick, my roommate told me I missed a super chat, something about the UK, $10 from the UK, asking me, I can't find this yet. Oh no, I'm going to feel so bad. Oh, here we go. No, I didn't. I can't find it. Something about how American politics affects the UK, and if that person could repost it without sending me money, I would read it again. I'm so sorry that I missed it. But real quick, Mahalan Miller for $10, not to be too dumb.
Oh, I read that one.
Oh, you did? Okay,
cool. I read that one while you were away.
Cool. Well,
yeah.
I won't read it again, but thank you, Mahalan. Phil Nerdy says you answered that already. Okay, well then my roommate missed me answering it, and he should give me $10. Wash your damn hands. I did wash my hands. Fuck. So did Sarah get her question answered though? Because she is, or he, or I don't know, maybe it's a dog, is going off about all sorts of stuff, but I don't know if that was something you were addressing or not. Sarah Dog, that was the one who asked, like, well, you lied by omission, JJ. But I shouldn't be platforming all these adversarial people unless they pay me money to yell at us.
I engaged with that abstract critique as best I could.
Yeah. What that is a question I guess I have for you is, as you become a larger YouTuber, the haters come. It's been a month. Yeah. I think a month ago I got my first real hate comment, like, this is terrible and you should stop. Don't quit your day job. And it doesn't really bother me. It's kind of funny to me because most of the time I think the critiques that really hurt the most are the ones that are like, oh, I have that critique of myself and you just called it out. And I now read several thousand hate comments and I'm just kind of like, whatever. But I hear so many people say, don't read those. It's going to destroy you. I don't know if it's because I'm just forged in the Call of Duty Modern Warfare lobbies, or if it's that legitimately these comments just aren't attacking what I have with myself as a problem. But how do you deal with negativity? Do you just ignore it completely? Do you let it shape kind of if it's constructive, how you go forward with that? What's your been experience?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, having done this for so long, and then before that having been in sort of TV news and journalism and all that, I've gotten a pretty thick skin. These comments don't really get at me that much. If somebody has a good faith criticism, I take it seriously. And even frankly, some of those really sort of biting comments, if they hit at a personal insecurity, I do try to learn from it. I try to be self-critical. If someone sort of criticizes me for making a mistake that I know in my heart I did make, then I will try to internalize that and improve going forward. But, if people are just mean and just dumb and just making fun of me, I'm not going to be bothered by that. You're just some rando moron on the internet and I'm a big successful YouTuber, so I don't have to take flack from you, right? So
see, I have the double-edged sword where I'm replying to all the comments, so I'm like, you're not just some random YouTuber. I try to put your opinion just as high as I'd hold my own, but your comment's really lame and it's not telling me why I suck. So I just reply to all my hate comments with, I forgive you. I just say I forgive you. You know, like it's okay. Like it's okay. Turn the other cheek. But another super chat. Thank you very much, Cryptic Scriber with the fake Australian dollar reduce 15. Hypothetically, what are your thoughts on a Commonwealth in the style of the EU with broader powers and more official structures, free trade, freedom of movement, a Commonwealth Parliament? I think is this talking about Canada as this, or I don't know if maybe they're extrapolating this to like multiple countries coming into this, or do you kind of know what that is?
I mean, I think it's. I think. Well, I mean, I'll just come out and say it. I think that's a dumb idea. I don't think that is a good thing. I
Yeah,
mean,
idiot. Why'd you send us money for that dumb question, stupid? Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I don't know. It's just I'm very unsentimental about this kind of thing. The Commonwealth is a dumb organization that does nothing, and it is like the most irrational grouping of countries you could possibly devise. You know, it's geographically scattered. They have nothing in common. They have no like political, economic ties of
Could
any
you
meaning.
enlighten me? What is the Commonwealth? Because I know about
So
the
the
EU.
Commonwealth. Yeah, the Commonwealth is the former British Empire, right? So it's like after the empire was sort of dissolved, the Brits set up an organization called the Commonwealth, which is this kind of non-governmental organization that is headed by the King or Queen of Great Britain and doesn't do anything. Like it struggled for relevance for its entire existence, right? Like it was a way that the Brits initially like could kind of save a bit of dignity when they lost their empire. They could sort of give because like the king or queen goes on like the Commonwealth tour, and King Charles was at the Commonwealth summit in October, where it's like all of the prime ministers of the different Commonwealth countries, which is everywhere from like India, Canada, Sierra Leone, Belize, Papua New Guinea, just like this random assortment of countries that the Brits used to own. And they can all sort of gather and sort of say, we are the Commonwealth. And then King Charles can be like, look at our great Commonwealth family. I'm still relevant. Right?
This is like you get the king and you put him in the room with like the fake Oval Office with the toys, and you're like, yeah, you're still king. You're still king. Go ahead. It's fine. You still own them. It's fine. Yeah. Okay.
No, and quite literally, like this seems to have been something that like kept the late former queen sort of engaged in a job that would otherwise be pretty monotonous, right? Like the fact that she got to go on a lot of trips and tour around, and imagine that she was of more relevance to the world than she actually was, So, but it's like there's a certain person that is nevertheless entranced by the Commonwealth because it has a sort of like romantic British history to it. And so they always sort of imagine that wouldn't it be nice if the Commonwealth actually mattered in some way? So like there every so often you get these people that like Nigel Farage in Great Britain sort of says this, right? And it's also sort of like unsort of reconstructed British imperialists who just, hate everything that's not British coded in some way. And so they imagine like, oh, wouldn't it be nice if we did trade with the Commonwealth, or if there was free trade within the Commonwealth, or if Commonwealth citizens could kind of come and go and between their countries. But it's like there's no economically rational basis. Like I don't know like why a Canadian politician should even spend like 3 seconds thinking about improving trade with
Papua New Guinea, Belize,
Papua New Guinea, right? There's just so many like vastly more important things that would matter vastly more to Canada than sort of indulging in this kind of cheap imperial nostalgia.
Yeah, that makes sense to me because like when I lived in the EU for a while, and I really enjoyed the like unrestricted travel and the like the agreements back and forth with trade and all that. It seemed like it was a very beneficial thing. I know there are downsides where like you'll get these Greece or these countries that like don't have as much economic power, and they kind of drag the euro down. I understand that like people are upset a little bit of some of that globalization, but like it seemed to work really well, and that's why Brexit seems like a big misstep. But yeah, I agree. If these states don't border and they really don't have a lot to offer each other, and you've got like essentially the hyper extreme of that, which is like this mega country like Canada, and it's like, all right, now do I have to take care and be the daddy to like all these tiny countries with like a few 100,000 people in it? Like, what's the point? But
we need to have this like what we need is like Canada and the US have to have something like this, right? Like Canada and the US. What I always say is that like if Germany and France, who fought 2 world wars against each other, can have free trade and free movement of people and labor, like the least we can do is have that for Canada and the US, the 2 most similar countries in the world, the 2 longest sort of peaceful allies, right?
No, we don't want those smelly Canadians in our country. Get them out of here, man. Yeah, no, it is kind of weird how we're so like restrictive on that. You would think we would be able to work that out with Canada. Like what was it, like the fentanyl thing that they're all upset about right now? What was it, like a few dozen pounds of fentanyl were seized at the Canadian border or something like ridiculously small,
less than 1%, right?
And it's
like less than 1%.
All those dang illegal Canadian immigrants coming over and for our guns, maybe. Like what would they even have?
Yeah.
I know people go to Canada for like, I mean, the big historical moment was during the conscientious objectors during the Vietnam War were like fleeing to Canada,
Mm.
right? But like, you know, now what is it? Like I said, like ski kids trying to get alcohol when they're 18, like healthcare, maybe you
Yeah.
sneak over and like, you know, pretend like you got hurt over the border. Like what's I think you could probably do like a more open border type thing, like EU type thing up there, and it wouldn't really have a lot of negative effects. But maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not a what do you even call someone who analyzes the flow of people across countries, and not an anthropologist, right?
No, I don't know. That's a good question. There
Yeah.
surely is a word,
I'm
but
sure there's
yeah.
a word. Super chat from Peggle Mafia, $4.20. Hey, lol, funny number. Soy pill, can you get a pump in and flex your bicep? I can't get a pump in because I
Oh
don't have
boy.
workout equipment. I can flex my bicep. We talked a little bit about the like masculinity of politics and like working out and how it's kind of it's like been kind of stolen from the right, like or by the right. Like they're like, oh, you know, yeah, working out and
Mm.
like taking care of yourself is kind of like a right wing thing now for some reason. And I'm trying to like counter that narrative. Why do you think that's happened? Because you kind of asked me that, but like, do you have your own take on it?
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of been interesting. I mean, like you know, there's all these sort of tropes about the national divorce and sort of like what the right got and what the left got and all that.
Yes, yes,
And it is interesting that like the right seems to have just gotten like fitness and like
and
working out
health,
in
yeah,
this
like
and
even
health, right? Well, I mean, but like
a
the
little
health
bit,
thing
you
you could
know,
sort of
yeah,
say, yeah. That one's a little hazier in terms of like credible health and that kind of thing. But it
yeah.
definitely does seem like being like fit, being like a buff guy like you, like that is kind of like a right coded, like I don't know, physique, like look, right? And
Yeah.
I've
It's funny because I've had a lot of neo-Nazis like cuz I'm part Jewish and like they'll always criticize me, but they're always like these kind of chunky guys and I'm like I look a lot more like
mm,
the Aryan poster boy than you do and I think that's kind of funny. But yeah,
I asked
it's yeah.
no, I was going to say I actually asked this question once to a fellow Canadian bodybuilder, influencer, YouTuber, Jeffrey Nippard, if you know him.
Yeah, I think you mentioned
Uh,
it to me.
Yeah, yeah. And I asked him this question once because I know him a little bit, and he was made a cameo in one of my videos once. And I asked him like, why are your people, the muscle set, why are they so right wing these days? And he sort of said like, there's a kind of like hyper individuality that kind of comes with bodybuilding. Like, there's a kind of real sense of like, you know, I'm perfecting myself. It's me against the world. You know, a lot of people don't really understand this thing that I'm into. And you know, he said that like sometimes they have sort of like power fantasies and like even sort of violent fantasies and you know stuff relating to kind of like strength and dominance and that obviously not all there's you know all these subcultures have you know variety of people in them but he was sort of suggesting that there is a kind of vein of a kind of sort of mindset that gets into fitness and bodybuilding that can lead itself to being uh, sort of a credulous believer in a lot of other parts of sort of adversarial kind of like right wing politics, especially some of this stuff relating to dominance and like
The
we
might
must
mix
crush the
right
weak and
mentality, yeah,
yeah,
is
yeah,
really there.
yeah.
But I would also say it's that the left has kind of rejected it because of the positivity movement and like because
Mm,
fitness influencers are tied to fat shaming, body shaming. It's almost like they've thrown the baby out with the bathwater, and it's like, well, no, you can't. Like in taking care of yourself in fitness, you are rejecting the idea that I'm okay, that I look fine the way I am. Like I remember
yes.
there was that big outcry. This is obviously dumb, like SGW crap back in like 2014, but like there were like, "Are you Beachbody ready?" ads in the UK, and it was like someone,
Oh yeah,
a
yeah.
fitness influencer who's skinny, and it's like, "How dare you say that if I don't look like this, I'm not Beachbody ready?" And it's like, this the crazy pearl clutching thing, but like yeah, like that does drive away people who are in the fitness industry. Like, well, I just want to take care of myself, and then you got the right wing being like, yeah, working out's great. I love working out. I look great, and it's like, okay, cool. I'm gonna go with those people, and then that's how you get like seeped into that
Yeah.
ideology when really it shouldn't be that way. And I'm hoping to rope some of those people back and be like, hey, you can work out and also not be a crazy right wing person. Like it's not, it doesn't have to be that way, but.
Yeah.
And by the way, Peckle Mafia, another $2. Thank you. Are you natty or not? I am natty, although I'm tempted by steroids every day. God, do I wish I looked like those delicious steroid people. But hey,
Steroids are very right coded as well in the sort of sense that it feels like a sort of extension of just kind of like the shamelessness of kind of right wing world, where it's like if you destroy all taboos on everything, it naturally follows that you might destroy the taboo on doing steroids, right? Something that has previously been sort of stigmatized as being shameful
It's like
if if you
cheating.
just
Yeah. But it's like,
yeah,
hey,
but
well,
if you choose
everyone
to
else
just
is doing it and I've got to win and like,
yeah,
it's the only way to get by. Like I see a lot of people say stuff like that. And I just don't think it's true. I think you can look better than 95% of the population with a good routine and good healthy eating. But if you want to be
yeah.
peak, you got to get on gear. And I'm not endorsing it. Don't do it. It'll hurt you and it'll kill you. I'm just saying that every celebrity that you wish you looked like is on gear, and that's fine with them because they have money for the doctors that make sure they don't die, but you shouldn't do it. So that's my medical advice from my
Let me
armchair.
ask you a question.
Yeah.
Like they do these contests, right? The bodybuilding contests where I guess you win medals or whatever. Are those people famous? Like, are there professional bodybuilders that are
There
like
are.
celebrities?
There's a
Yeah,
couple big ones. Like obviously Arnold was one of the big ones and he turned
yeah.
into, but he wasn't like no one would have known really who he was as a household name until he went into movies, right? Like he would have just been
Hmm.
the good bodybuilder. There's people like Ronnie Coleman. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's just ginormous. Like I don't know if you've heard the term Dorito body, but if you just Google Ronnie Coleman, he looks like a Dorito. Like he's a triangle, and
Yeah.
he is
Oh,
giant.
because
And
his
like
waist is so
yeah,
tiny. Yeah.
exactly, and he's so wide, and it's incredibly unhealthy the way they do that to their bodies, and they just look like these like superhuman, like space marine, like insanely body modified people, and like I don't know how they do it. I don't think it's good for you. I think like you have a lot of heart problems. I think it causes a lot of back pain, and it's just not worth it. Like it's not worth all the.
Are
Hmm?
are all of these people like right wing? I guess is sort of where I was leading
Oh,
to
I
it.
don't
Like,
even think. I think most of
yeah,
these people are probably apolitical, just off the top of my head.
yeah.
But it's similar to the UFC crowd, where the UFC
Hmm.
is like a lot more of like not just the body, like working out and fitness, but also the dominance and the winning. And I don't know if you've ever watched like a UFC live stream or if you even care about it, but like I don't. But sometimes I'll catch one, and the chat is the most racist right wing crap you have ever seen in your life, because
Yeah,
that's the kind of place where I mean, Dana White is part of the Trump admin now, and
yeah,
Joe
yeah.
Rogan is part of that community, and he does foster a lot. Like he didn't make a lot of his community right wing. A lot of his community was right wing because they came from the UFC community, and like that sort of like
Hmm.
masculine defeat your enemies. Like this is the natural place of where we are. It's beating each other in an octagon. Like that is right wing coded as shit. And I don't know as much as
Yeah.
bodybuilding. I would assume they're more right wing, but I don't get a lot of that from them.
Hmm.
But yeah. Another super chat from Zane Kane. This is something you can add to too. This is 199 euros. By the way, if you have to go in five, this has been 2.5
No, I
hours.
don't.
Feel
I'm
free.
fine.
Okay. Yeah, because you're
I
a
like
loser
long
like me,
cuts.
of course. Yeah.
Of
What do you
course.
think
What else am I
of
gonna be doing?
the JREG recent video on Canada? I'll give my thoughts real quick because I did watch it. I thought it was very funny, but I do have. I don't know if this is
Yes.
a criticism of JREG, but this is like like I'm a little frustrated because like as someone who respects him and thinks he's really smart. A lot of his stuff is like very like I'm not taking a stance on this. I'm just making it funny, and I like that because it's
Yeah.
funny. But then I'm like, I wish you had a stance on it. Like I wish you used this platform to also push for things because I can tell like beyond the like 17 layers of irony there is a point, and he does have a position, but he doesn't really push it very hard, and that's his shtick, and that's fine. But like I almost wish he did. What do you think about that, or maybe specifically just that
Oh,
Canada video?
I mean, I thought the Canada video was very funny. I really liked sort of the angle that he took at it, sort of being one of these samurai sword incel types with,
Yeah.
the top, and all
The
that
hat
kind of thing,
tipping,
right?
yeah.
He had shown me the script before he made it, and I thought it was funny. I thought it was a good script, but as is so often the case with him, it's the performance that really nails it. And he's just a great performer, right? Like independent of anything else, like that is his great talent in life. Is he's a wonderful performer. Um, no, I mean like you know. JREG is very into the pseudoscience of the Myers-Briggs personality type, and both he and I are ENTPs, which means that you're a perceiver. And in Myers-Briggs pseudoscience, a perceiver is somebody that like prefers to gather rather than conclude, essentially. And
Okay.
so I think that's something that him and I really kind of like have in common is that I think we are both like very kind of curious people, and that's something that I think Greg doesn't get enough credit for. Is he is very curious. He likes to learn. He likes to learn about the world. He likes
Yeah.
to absorb information. And I think he's more confident sort of collecting information than necessarily acting on it in a dramatic and decisive and accountable sort of
Yeah,
way. And I
yeah,
don't think
I
that's
see that
necessarily
in
a
his
bad
videos.
thing.
Yeah, I don't think it's a bad thing either. By the way, I want to make that clear. Like it's one of those
Yeah,
like, oh, I'm so used to hearing people give like prescriptive claims that I'm like expecting it, like the punchline, but that it never comes. But then I'm like,
yeah,
that's not what he does, and that's fine. Because I think yeah, it's fucking hilarious. But on that point of him being very curious, like I have seen some videos from him where I'm like, I've never heard of this in my life, and you are just like doing this deep dive in this like crazy esoteric like political ideology, and like that skill
yeah,
is a lot of fun to watch for sure.
yeah.
So yeah, I get that.
And so
Although
I think that that's the two sides of the same coin, though, right? Like if people like JREG because of these deep dives he does on all sorts of crazy esoterica, they also have to be prepared for the another extension of that is that maybe his videos are not always just opinionated rants about, you know, his deepest held beliefs, which may or may not even exist.
yeah, that's why he has the or the like what's the the little the little graphic that's just like the giant 3D spinning word satire that just like appears on screen
Oh
whenever he's
yeah,
talking. It's
yeah.
so funny. Oh man, but yeah, no, I will say though, I do think Myers Briggs is like one step above astrology, but like you know, like is it
I mean, like the
really?
thing is, it's like it's not a science, but like I guess I've sort of been worn down by it because J Reg likes to talk about it a lot, and you know we have a mutual friend as well. Greg and I are both very close with Frank James, who's like the king of Myers Briggs YouTube,
Okay,
and because
there's a
we've
whole
consumed so much of his
YouTube
content.
community on Myers Briggs.
Oh oh God,
You
yes.
might have just
There's a
opened a
YouTube
door
community
that
for
I didn't want
everything.
opened, but okay, yes.
But the thing is, the thing is that like so Frank James, I think, has taught us both a lot about it. He's very very wise. But one thing that he, like even he will sort of say is that the Myers Briggs is most useful in that it gives you sort of tools for understanding yourself, as opposed to like because he's very critical, and I think a lot of the Myers Briggs diehards are very critical of the idea that you just go to 16personalities.com, answer a couple of questions, learn what Spice Girl you are, and then sort of move on from there. But no, it's like Ian, like the Myers Briggs gives you these concepts like, are you a judger or are you a perceiver? Are you a thinker or a feeler? You know, the one everybody knows is, are you an introvert or an extrovert, right?
Hmm.
And these are useful concepts because you can kind of think about like your own thought patterns and like all things being equal, like what sort of types of patterns of thinking or patterns of
Yeah,
behavior are you more inclined to fall into,
it's a
right?
good way to like self-reflect and kind of understand like when people like advertise them on their dating profiles, it's not really a good way to like understand what kind of person they are, but like when you use that, I agree with that as a tool to be like, well, I answered these questions this way, and like how does that affect like how I am analyzing things, like I think that is a good way for to self-reflect and grow for sure, and that does put it a step above astrology because at least it's based in like some sort of thing that you started off with, like there's some data going in, it's not like I just made this up. Like that's probably pretty good. If you had to guess, what personality am I?
I need to spend more time with you because this is a somewhat artificial situation, right?
That's
Like we're
true.
having, you know, a dialogue, right? But if we were like hanging out and I got to know you as a person, I'd probably be a little bit better.
Okay, I won't tell you. I won't tell you.
You
Oh,
seem
okay, you can make a guess.
I
I
mean you
won't tell you if
seem
you're right.
I mean you seem relatively sort of extroverted. You have a sort of I think yeah, I think I would probably feel, but I mean, like, it's easy to think everybody's an extrovert when they're in sort of like a
When they're a
performative kind
YouTuber,
of context like this.
yeah.
Yeah,
I'm pretty
but I
much
don't
the
know.
exact same
You
on
seem
camera.
actually, I would say that you seem more like a P type than a J type. Just sort of having this conversation and seeing some of your videos, you seem a little bit more hesitant to conclude as opposed to learn. And I think
Hmm.
that
Okay.
that is something that I don't always think of, particularly like when it comes to like YouTubers on the left. I feel like a lot of them are real hard J types, and I think that actually works to their detriment. And one thing that I think attracted me a little bit to your content is that you do seem a little bit more like a P type, which is more like me and
Okay.
more like the kind of you know this
Hell
kind of
yeah.
type I
Speaking
stuff
of P
I
types,
respect.
piss politics. Yeah, let's go. Bring it back. Um, I
Yeah.
am a P type. No, I was gonna say the funny thing is my secret. I actually don't remember what my Myers Briggs is, so you could have said anything,
Oh,
and it would have been like astrology. You'd have been
oh.
like, "Yep, that's me." But if we do hang
But
out,
I
and I
mean, you
thought,
don't even. But the thing is, like, the point is, you don't even really fully know what it is, right? Because
hmm,
again, like, it's not just a matter of taking one quiz one time. It's
yeah,
about learning these bigger concepts and then learning to sort of self-diagnose.
Yeah. Oh, self-diagnosed. That's a dangerous word, but yes, I will try to. And
Well,
I'm curious because I do want to visit Canada, and JREG has invited me to the studio. Maybe I'll do a little Canadian tour. I'll come say hi to you. I'll come say hi to
yeah,
JREG. I thought you lived close. You guys are on the other side of the stupid big country. I don't know why.
yeah.
But then you can diagnose me with whatever Myers-Briggs disease I have. Fred
Yes.
Skull, thank you for the 4.99. Fitness equals personal responsibility equals toxic masculinity equals right coded. It's really annoying, and this is coming from a soy boy gym rat, by the way. Well, hello, fellow soy boy gym rat. I agree with that. I kind of the personal responsibility narrative from the right of the like, hey, take control, like it's the government's not your nanny, you need to pick yourself up, you're the only person who can change the situation. I think a lot of that mentality does go into people who work out. And on the other end, people who are like, oh, it's my genetics. Oh, I've got a thyroid condition. People who kind of make excuses. And don't get me wrong, there are legitimate excuses to not go to the gym. I know people who with chronic like medical conditions or they just like can't handle the like environment. But like that personal responsibility narrative does kind of feed into the working out narrative as well. And I think that a lot of the left does reject that to a degree. What are your thoughts?
Mm. Well, one thing that popped into my mind when we were actually talking about JREG, which I'm glad I now have a chance to re-engage with, is
Yes.
JREG and I have a friend, Joshua Citarella, who is a sort of left-wing podcaster. He has a channel of his own where he does a number of good interviews. Greg and I have both been interviewed by him, but he's into bodybuilding, he's into fitness, and
Is he
he
bigger
has
than
a
me?
very good uh,
That's I'm
no.
sorry, go on.
How could he be bigger than you? No. But anyway, he has a very good on his channel, Doom Scroll. He has a good interview about this very topic, sort of like the left and fitness and bodybuilding and all of this kind of stuff. With his buddy Young Chomsky, has a sort of unlikely name, but he's a bodybuilder as well, and they have a good sort of back and forth about this whole discourse. So if people are interested in sort of seeing a high level sort of intellectual leftist conversation about this rather than me who clearly has not seen the inside of a gym at all,
Hey, you said
I
you
would
walk
advise
four
people to
hours a
check
day,
it out.
right? You're no stranger
I
to
do walk four
fitness.
hours a day.
That's why
In
you
fact,
look
I'm getting a little.
so young. Like I thought, I saw your profile picture. You reached out to me. And I was like, is this some fucking 25-year-old million subscriber little shit who's
Oh
gonna rub it in
well.
my face? And like, then I saw a video. I was like, okay, he's got a little gray in his hair, but like, and then you're like, I'm 40. I'm like, you fucking with me right now? Like, I gotta go walk and eat vegetarian. Apparently, it's like you're the. By the way, you're
Well,
the second YouTuber in a row now to do this to me. FD Signifier, like he's got the black don't crack, and like he like looks great. I'm like, how old are you? And he's in, I guess, his 40s also, or maybe late 30s. I'm like, god damn it! Like I'm gonna look like I'm fucking 50 when I'm 30. Like this, like I gotta
well,
switch some stuff up, or at least I'll be buff and old
the
looking. But yeah,
the lighting does do a lot of favors. Like I have a lot more gray hair than is picked up by the camera.
mm.
So a lot of times whenever I meet like a fan or something on the street in person, a very common comment
You
on my
look
physical
old.
appearance. No, no, not that narrowly. People always say that I'm taller than they think they are, than they think I will be, which is nice. That's a nice compliment. And then people also always say that I have more gray hair than they realized.
How
So
tall are you?
that's
Can
fine.
I
Are
ask
you?
that? Am I allowed to?
I'm just like I'm like 5'11". I don't think I'm that tall, but I guess maybe I give
Fair.
off
If
short man
anything,
energy.
you're no, yeah, you're a midget. If you're below 6 foot, you're a short king, as they say. So it's
Is that
over for
so?
you. I want to say it is over. You will never find love.
Okay. All
You
right.
will
That's
never
tough but
find.
fair.
Well, actually, wait, no, you're gay. It doesn't matter. Oh, sorry, this is only for
Yeah.
straight men. Excuse
Oh
me.
yeah.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
of
if you're below
course.
six
Yeah, I
foot,
know.
it's over. It's absolutely over. I'm also
Are you,
5'11".
how tall are you?
I'm
How
five
tall are
like
you?
10 3/4. Like it's like I.
Oh,
The only
that's
reason I
fine.
say that is because when I say I'm 5'10", people say no, you're not. You're too tall, and I'm like, okay, I guess I'm a little taller. But I also will say that I'm 5'8", so that people who are 5'8" look like they're lying, and it's really funny. But
Is it true that it's easier for short people to become muscular than tall
yes,
people, or is that
yes,
just like
yes. It's
oh
a
yeah?
various thing. So one is the proportions. It looks better when you're a little shorter, like you look a little more buff. But also, shorter people have like shorter arms and shorter legs. So like lifting a 400-pound deadlift when you're shorter, you don't have to go as far. So you can build up that strength and pull it up a little easier than you could if you were 6 foot, 7 foot tall. So yeah, they have a weirdly easier time. I've been called a gremlin sometimes because they're like, you buff little gremlin, you're short and it's so easy for you,
Yeah.
even though I'm 5'10". But yeah, like 5'2", like you see these Guatemalan guys in the gym and they're just killing it. They look great. Like they've got the perfect proportions. But then it's funny
Mm.
because you'll watch them on the stage, the bodybuilding stage you were talking about, and it's like, wow, that guy looks amazing. He's shredded. His proportions all good. And then a normal human being walks up who's like 5'6" and like makes them look like a pygmy, and it's just like, oh my god, like I did not even realize. Um,
Mm.
but yeah, I think there's a lot of rhetoric around height on the internet, with dating, with like all sorts of communities that I've just never experienced. I've like never been shamed for my height, and I'm coming from a 5'10" is not short, but like everyone's like, yeah, if you're not 6 foot tall with a six pack and six figures, like it's over, like you'll never find love, and I'm just like, I just never have seen this like be a detriment to literally anyone. There's always something else going on that's like their real problem, and then they're also like 5'4".
Yeah.
Um, but
I mean,
we
this
gotta.
is
Okay,
this
go
is
ahead.
part of sort of. Oh, sorry.
No, no,
No, I was
no.
just going to say it's sort of the internet has sort of radicalized people's brains in so many different directions, and everything is sort of turned into a kind of like rigid ideological pseudoscience. And it definitely feels like this world of looks maxing, which is
Yes.
another thing that Greg has introduced into my life,
Oh, yes.
is really like pretty terrifying because it is. It's like some of these young men are really of the belief that like being attractive is this like almost scientific formula, and that you have to like hit certain magic numbers, otherwise it's just impossible, right? And
And
that's just such a,
there's like some
yeah,
truth to
so
it because it's
toxic.
like, yeah, people like symmetrical faces, people like square jaws in general, but like it's so funny like living life, knowing as many people as I've known, and watching just like, and I'm not going to name any names, but it's just like the ugliest rat motherfuckers find love with like the best
Oh
people
yeah.
and go and have kids. And then also like the most gorgeous 10 out of 10 people struggle for like years to find even like a one relationship that works for them. Like there are outliers, but like people, yeah, like trying to like get it down to a science, like when the gap in male attractiveness should come from the fact that like they don't know how to dress, they don't work out, they don't take care of themselves, and they turn it into this like
Yeah.
equation of like, well, if I just like stick my tongue in the top of my mouth and square my jaw by like mewing,
Yeah.
like I'm gonna become a Chad and I'll find love. It's just like, oh god, like who stepped into that void to fill the role of like what you needed to be, and how do we get rid of them and replace them with like, I don't know, like a really gay fashion designer who can get you some nice like good color matching and stuff. It's depressing.
Yeah.
But Peggle Mafia, thank you so much for the $2 again. Thoughts on Stupid Poll, JPEG Mafia, and Mike O'Tren? Do you know any of these names? This is all gibble garble to me. I'm assuming that at
This is
least,
all gobbledygook.
yeah, the last one I think might be fitness influencer. Maybe all of them are, because a tren is like a type of, I don't know if you've heard of that steroid, like trenlabite or
No.
tren something. It's a thing that the meme in the workout community is like, how do I get to look like you? And it's eat well and tren hard, not train hard. It's like, yeah, like I'm on
Oh.
steroids essentially.
Mm.
But yeah, it's I don't know any of those people. I'm sorry for your wasted $2. My thoughts are they have silly names.
Yeah.
Um,
JPEG Mafia. That's a pretty
oh,
good
that's
name.
a
I don't know what
rapper. I
they're.
do know that name. Okay,
Oh, is that
JPEG
so?
Mafia. Yeah, and the answer
Mm.
is I probably have heard a
Okay.
bunch of songs by them and don't know. Like I'm musically illiterate. You can play me a song, I'll be
Me
like, yep,
too.
I've heard this 100,000 times. I have no idea who does this. But I thought maybe it had to do with JREG. Is JREG Mafia a thing? Does he do
Oh.
his own rap?
oh, it should
Um,
be. He could. I mean, that would be a. I should give that idea to him.
oh yeah, don't forget to ask him whether or not your background is Reddit. I want to hear his opinion on that. Like it just
Okay,
don't
I
no
will
context
ask
to
him
be
that.
like, Greg, is my background Reddit? Just like send him a
I will
photo.
text him that right now.
Oh, maybe he'll answer before the stream's over. That'd be real funny.
Yes, yes.
Um, Max Sterner, your mod, has been asking this a few times. He said, "What do you think of the Grammys last night?" Speaking of musically illiterate people and questions you shouldn't ask them, I like I don't have any opinions on the Grammys. I didn't watch them. I'm sure there were lots of good songs there. The only one I ever even knew about was the one where Kanye West did the whole interrupting thing, and that's all I know about the Grammys. So I don't know. Do you have
Mm.
thoughts on the Grammys? Because your mod seems to think that we'd have good opinions on it.
All I know is based on like a 2 second conversation I had with one of my colleagues at the studio today, was that Kendrick Lamar apparently really
Mm,
cleaned up. So I'm
yes,
happy to hear
yes,
that because we all hate Drake, right? So
yeah, because he's Canadian, right? That's why we hate him.
Well, yeah, he's brought great dishonor to this country. So,
Yeah. Oh, I know what I wanted to ask you. Speaking of horrible Canadians,
mm,
do you have you covered, and what do you think about Stephen Crowder and like these like or like a Gavin McInnes, like these
mm.
hugely influential in American politics people who are not from America? Do you have any
Well,
big thoughts on those people?
yeah, I actually wrote a piece about this for the new for the Washington Post,
Hmm.
which is the headline was something like "Why does American politics have so many Canadian pundits?" or something. I
Yeah,
mean,
and you're part
I
of
mean
that, by the
Stephen
way.
Crowder
You're
is not.
part of the problem.
I
So
well I well I mean, but I talk about Canadian stuff so much. I
yeah,
feel like I've earned my right to occasionally dabble in American politics. Right? I've made
yeah.
dozens of videos about everything to do with this country. But I mean, one thing, Stephen Crowder is not actually Canadian. This is a often believed myth.
Really? Oh,
I think he was like
birtherism. We're
born
doing a
in.
birtherism for Stephen Crowder.
No, I mean Stephen Crowder. I think like lived briefly in like Montreal when he was young, but you know
Okay.
he's not a Canadian any more than like Kamala Harris is Canadian, who also lived in Canada for a time.
Oh.
But uh, but no, but there is a larger phenomenon that I do think is true. Like we can look at Jordan Peterson
Oh
or
yeah.
there's like there's a whole bunch of people that are from Canada. Uh, but I think it's just like, I mean, the views are with American politics. Like, if you want to be successful as an influencer, the American market is obviously much larger. And in the same way that any sort of successful Canadian businessman is always sort of plotting a strategy to get into the American market, so too would the information economy, the attention economy be no different. I think that American politics is simpler. It's easier to understand, and so it's easier. It kind of has a little bit. No, it's true.
Yeah, I
I
know,
don't mean
but it
that
is
in the
also
sense that
funny.
American
It's
politics is
it's like,
dumber.
yeah, you guys. Well, come on, it is like it is dumber.
Well, Well,
Like,
it is, but I mean, like this was the case, but this was the case even in, the pre-Trump era, right? Because America has like a two-party system. It's very clean, right versus left. It kind of maps neatly onto the broader sort of divisions you see in the culture, more generally. It involves a lot of like high-profile celebrities that people understand, and
yeah,
I don't know. I don't know. Like the American system of government is very elegant and simple as well. You got the president, you got the Congress, the Supreme Court, like just these big, clean sort of things, right? Like, and Americans take this stuff for granted, which just seems natural to them. But then, like, you try to understand the Canadian politics, and have more multiple parties and different provinces, and our parliamentary system is convoluted. Like the most common thing I get from my fellow Canadians is people knowing that I'm a Canadian politics guy. Is they just ask me like, so JJ, how does our system work? How does our political system work?
the
Like
people in
Trudeau is
Canada are
resigning,
asking
and
you this.
yeah,
Like,
all the time, all
okay,
the time. Like people ask me to just explain very basic things. And I think the big sort of dirty secret of a lot of these Canadians that are engaged in the American political discourse is not that they're doing it purely for business reasons, but they just don't understand Canadian politics and they don't feel comfortable talking about it, right? Like a lot of these people, if I sat down with them and I asked them, and I see this all the time because I sometimes cross paths with these people, and I ask them like, oh, so like, what do you think of the recent provincial elections? Do you think Doug Ford's going to get back in, or do you? And they're like, I don't know. Well, can we talk about like the Democrat primary in Pennsylvania instead? It's just like,
yeah, they've fully assimilated into the dumb politics of us. Yeah, that makes sense.
well,
See that makes me want to get into Canadian politics to feel more cultured. But then, like you said, I just don't care. Like you guys aren't as important.
it's the concept, like the stakes are just much lower, right? It's just like in the same reason why and it's not just Canadians who do this. Like you see a lot of Brits and Australians and people from other European countries that can, make a decent living sort of talking about politics that in theory doesn't really affect them, but is entertaining to just follow, and you can make a lot of money, I suppose, weighing in on it.
Yeah, like I'm not gonna lie, the reason my channel blew up as much as I like all the videos I made was because I went to a Trump rally. So like
Yeah,
that kind of exploded it, and I'm not gonna try to feed into that. I don't want to let it like influence what I want to make as art, but like I get chasing the dragon, and I get why they do it. So it's hard to blame
yeah,
them, but I really,
yeah.
yeah, I don't know how much. you like when you made a Balatra video, was that because Balatra was popular or because you were genuinely interested in Balatra? You know, like how do you influence your own like paths forward to like make sure you're not
Yeah,
following into the like, oh well, I have to play to the algorithm? Because FD was giving me some
yeah.
advice that was like, obviously like he says what he wants to say, but like he's also like, oh, but you really have to like tailor this, like switch your thumbnails and like make sure you're like posting at the right time. Like he really has that system down, and
Oh
like
yeah.
part of me like doesn't even want to do that. I'm like, oh, like that's so much work. Like if it's my job, it's my job. I got to make money, but like I just want to be myself. That was the whole point. So like, yeah, how do you let that influence you?
It's tough. I mean, because it's like I've been actually feeling this way like this week, in fact, because I make a video every week, and it's like, oh, the tariff thing is big in the news, and because people look to me to Mr. Canada, like, do I have to make a video on this? And it's like I don't really want to make a video about it. Like, I don't think I have much to say and enough for it to be video length, but you feel that pressure, right? Like it's in the headlines and gotta run. But I don't know. I guess you kind of have to have faith that 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 you can make content that is good independent of just these kind of external pressures of the headlines and the algorithms and you know fads and all of this kind of stuff, right? So
Yeah, a good
I
swimmer
don't know. I mean,
might
it's
go with the flow
yeah,
of the river. This is my bad analogy, but a strong
yeah,
swimmer
okay,
can swim through it no matter what, and you can be that
yeah.
strong swimmer.
I
Does
mean,
that
it's
make
not to say
sense?
that, like, yeah, no, I get what you're saying, right? And I do think that's right. Like, that's kind of like the broad, sort of like moderate take, because, sometimes, not all the time, you have to be sensitive to these things without being completely captured by them. Because I mean, and the other thing too is that it is not an exact science, and that anybody that professes that YouTube is some sort of system that can just be hacked and perfected is, just as ignorant as the person that thinks that appearances can be hacked and perfected by hitting the
Yeah.
perfect numbers and having the perfect strategy, right?
You
You
can
do kind of have to
influence
play
it,
these things
but
by
it's
ear.
not. Yeah, no
Yeah,
one has it down pat. I don't even think they know, right? Like it's not an algorithm
yeah,
they've coded. It's now like machine learning, so they know the weights and they know what they're trying to get it to do, but like they don't know exactly how that works. Like so,
and I'm just very skeptical of people that come at this with this abundance of confidence that they've mastered the system, because it's always worth looking at how successful that they've been. And I'm not sort of casting shade on anybody in particular, but people are often know-it-alls until they
until they're
aren't,
not,
right?
yeah.
Like, yeah.
Well,
So
it's the classic like every single stock trader ever who you're supposed to take advice from, and it's like, yep, no, I'm so rich. Look at me, listen to me, and then like it's the selection bias. You don't see them when they lose $100 million and disappear off the face of the earth. So,
yeah.
although I do subscribe to the Jim Cramer negative index fund and just do whatever the opposite of Jim Cramer's advice is, it actually works out pretty well. So, yeah. Cool. I think we've covered a lot. I am getting incredibly tired actually, and I unfortunately still have a full-time job. Gosh dang it.
Oh my.
But any
I'm hungry and I need to eat some dinner, and I'm
vegetarian
sure you need
food
to
and go
eat one of your.
walk 4 miles, you health nut. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's getting late, so I hope there's places that are still open, but it's fine. I need to
Yes.
get some walking in. Got to get my 2 hours, and I'm sure you need to eat your like 15th bodybuilder meal of the day, right? So
Yes,
we'll,
exactly. But yeah, any last thoughts? I want to say thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for reaching out. This is great. I don't view this as transactional. I would like to hang out in real life, despite the fact that transactionally I will have to buy a $400 plane ticket. But I want to. I want to do my Canadian tour. I want to meet up. I am happy to have this conversation, and I hope that piss politics takes off as a term because I want to advocate for piss politics. We are shoving your face in the piss, and you are going to answer my
yes.
goddamn questions. But yeah, any last thoughts?
I was
Obviously, shout out your stuff. JJ McCullough, he's like this little guy. You might have heard of him, but you guys should all check out his channel. It's in the description. But anything else you might want to plug or any last thoughts?
Nah, it's fine. It was great. I love having these chats. I've been doing a lot of chats recently, of creators of all different sizes. I enjoy it. I enjoy the work that you're doing. I think it's good stuff. People subscribe to Old Man Soy Pill as well if you're watching this because you're just a fan of me. So no, it's great. I hope we can do it again someday.
Yeah, awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much. Have a great night, and don't walk so much you wither away. Make sure you're eating enough.
Right, man.
Have a good night. All right, everybody. That was JJ McCullough. What a guy. What a cool dude. Oh, you guys can't see me right now. Hold on. Let me see if I can grab back my webcam here. I'm just going to talk to you guys a little bit before I go. Boop, boop. Plugging it in. Webcam source. USB device. There we go. I'm back. Hey, everybody. How embarrassing. Sarah Dog. Sarah Dog, you were being so mean to JJ. He's such a nice guy. Why are you being mean to him? You have all these negative opinions. This is when I don't realize that there's actually some crazy background on every single one of these YouTubers, and it turns out they're I took that picture with Andrew Callahan, and then people start coming at me with all these crazy allegations, which may be true, by the way. I don't know. I didn't look into it much, but I'm like, oh shit, what do I do? I can't talk to this person. So, Cody Moon, there is a soy cord. Cody, did you make a soy cord? Oh no. Oh no, oh no. I disavow everything that happens. If you guys raise $1 million for charity, I disavow fucking everything that happens in that soy cord. I'm not part of it. Hold on. I'm just, let me write this chat real quick. All right. It was a boring talk about politics. That was, I know it was good. Thank you, Captain Bucket. I saw that you wanted me to make the video bigger. It doesn't make sense, the aspect ratio. Sorry, I hope that was big enough for you that you could see how big I am, despite being so small. Astra Comos, OMG Hi Soy, OMG Hi Astra. The people could decide what hate speech is. Okay, you guys are having some argument. Soy pill dick sword? What? What is this? I don't know what that means. Hey, I would absolutely support you if you want to take steroids. Just know the risks. Your body, your choice. I'm not going to take steroids. It's too dangerous. Beck Iverson, massive fan of you both. Thank you so much. Thoughts on Elon Musk saying he wants to send American prisoners to prisons in El Salvador with gangs? Not good, especially I wanted to talk about that on stream, but I could talk about it now. The fact that he is taking footage of sweatshop workers, these forced prison work, which is essentially slavery because they pay them but not a lot, and then saying, yeah, we should do this in America, or yeah, you should do this with these prisoners. I think that's insane. I don't think we should be using slave labor. Hot take. I am all for reform. I know I saw the firefighters, the LA prison firefighters doing a good job, and I think that's good. I think there are good ways to put people to work, give them a goal, and not just let them rot in prison. But the way that the Elon Musk would do it, I think is terrible. So VFSDM, do you have Instagram? Technically, yes. You can find me at the Soy Pill. I don't advertise it because I don't really post on there, but I'm there. Okay. Dick Sword is Discord. I got you. Ha 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 ha. I broke my stick that you complimented me. Oh, Astra Cosmos is a person I met in real life who had a stick, and I said, nice stick, and you broke it. I'm sorry you broke it. Oh, hey, Fireside. How's it going? I hope everyone went and subscribed to Fireside Chats because he does good stuff, and I shouted him out. Did I hear about Meta paying Trump $25 million? I did not. Is that, I'm assuming that's something to do with the, some sort of lawsuit about censoring things? Thoughts on Karl Marx and his cool books? I read the Communist Manifesto. Thought it was boring. Austin says, first-time viewer, I don't watch many partisan political channels, but I appreciate that your community seems to have a lot more different views and isn't an echo chamber. Well, I appreciate that too. I love my community. Hey, Legionary. That was too hot of a take, Soy. Slavery is a hot button topic, Those prison warners do have slave wages. Of course, the firefighting programs are still good. Yeah, it's great that they're getting put to work, and you interviewed them. I think Hassan interviewed them, and it was hey, these guys feel like they have goals, the community supporting them, and you can really see the change where they feel supported by their community. They feel like they have a goal. Their sentences get reduced. There's good ways to do this kind of reform and put people to work. I just don't like the idea of not paying them and incentivizing locking people up so that you can get cheap labor. That's kind of insane. I was just angry. I can't be held accountable for my actions. I don't know what that is in reference to. I'm one of the Trump supporters you debated IRL. I was the really stupid one. Alchemal. I don't think I debated any Trump supporters. I talked to them. But hi, if I met you in real life at the inauguration. Inauguration video is going to come soon, TM. A couple weeks maybe. I got to edit all the footage and record. I barely started on it. I've been dealing with all the Matt Walsh comments. Which, by the way, thank you guys. Holy shit, it got 500,000 views in a week. That was insane. And I think it might get remonetized if they don't deny the appeal. It's been a week at like midnight tonight, so we'll see what happens. I don't know if I get back pay on that because fuck me if they just have to copyright it once and then for a week they can steal all of the revenue from the 600,000 views and then it comes back to me and I get nothing. Like, go fuck yourself. But maybe that's what's gonna happen. You want the coloring book, Captain Bucket? Captain Bucket, maybe I'll do a giveaway. I'll sign the coloring book and send it to one of my subscribers in a raffle or something. YouTube hates free speech. Hey, buddy, how's it going? We're gonna chat on Discord after this. Maybe one day I'll bring you on stream, but I don't know if you'd want that heat. But we have stuff to talk about. Mr. YouTube hates free speech. There's a prison to firefighting to getting with Kiki Palmer pipeline. What? There's a bullcrap lawsuit about them banning him on Meta. Yeah, that seems like bullshit. They shouldn't pay him out. I bet it's like an imaging thing. Please make more videos like the terrible talk show ones. I mean, if I have something to complain about, I will. I might make one on Freedom Tunes. People keep asking me for that, and I've seen a lot of his bad takes. Now that Destiny's community has undergone a critical leakage of orbiters who should cash in, hey, if I'm the reasonable leftist streamer that's going to come in, I'll take it. YouTube hates free speech. I don't get back pay. Fuck me. That sucks. Oh, well. 250,000 of those views was me refreshing my bot farm. Thank you, Alchemel. Soon to he plays the forbidden game. What's the forbidden game from Soon TM? Can you oil up? If I hit 100,000 subscribers, I'll do an oil up stream. Why not? When are you getting back into Australian politics? Never. I don't know anything about Australia. They're upside down. It wasn't court ordered. It was settled out of court. Yeah, it's just meta kissing up to him. Mark Zuckerberg is a cuckerberg. YouTube hatred speech. Seamus. Yeah. Freedom to Seamus. Coco Boba. I love you, Soy Pill. Thank you, Coco Boba. I love you too. Dit Beer Guy. Hello. Hello, Dirt Beer. All right. John Stewart 2028. If he ran, I think that would actually be great. I think he could do a lot. Have I read Killing Hope yet? I haven't, Captain Bucket. I'm sorry. I've been so busy. I need to read more. First time coming here. Are you buff? Yes. Thank you, VFSDM. If the population isn't fast enough and the problem snowballs. Oh, okay. You guys are talking to each other. Stephen Smith 2020. Okay, I unironically think Stephen Smith could win. I really do think he could. It would be stupid, but I think he could do it. So we'll see what happens. The stream's volume is much quieter than your videos and the general levels I see on YouTube. I don't know if I can fix that. Maybe I'm not close enough to the mic. How about now? Is this better? Month. Why am I reading it like month? Oh, Jesus, I'm tired, guys. I'm gonna get out of here. We might be getting an oil up stream. Michael Dukakis, I don't know anything about him. It's been so long. If you ever get over 1 million, would you get a bowl cut? No. Bowl cut? Absolutely not. I already don't like the way my hair gets cut by whoever cuts it, and I need to figure out how to get a better haircut. So a bowl cut is not happening unless it's like another pandemic and I got to do it myself. All right, guys. I think that's going to be it for tonight. Thank you so much for tuning into the JJ. Just so you know, why the fuck did I make the Soy Pill Streams channel? If I'm here streaming, I'm going to clip this. I'm not going to include all this stuff at the end. It's going to start with JJ. It's going to end with JJ. It's going to be uploaded to that channel, and that's going to be where I put all my VODs, and it won't be on this channel, so maybe that will save me compartmentalizing everything, and people can watch the stream on the platform where I have all the subscribers. People can go watch the VOD on the streaming area. But I am streaming on main for now because that's where all you guys are. That way you can super chat and people don't miss it. And it's been so annoying to like have to go through and shift things, and yeah, ridiculous. JREG, I might not stream with JREG, but JREG did invite me to the studio, so I'm gonna try to do the Canada tour. I'll go visit Vancouver and Ontario and Ottawa and all the different words that I don't give a shit about. Canada sucks. Who cares? Oh, Fulcrum, thank you for joining. You became a basic fiend. Oh, the sound's still on too. Nice. But yeah, have a good night, everyone. Stay safe. Thank you so much for the support on the Matt Walsh video. I am ecstatic. I am ever so close to being able to make this my full-time job. Maybe a few more months, but definitely by the end of the year. Oh, I want it so bad. So good night. Thank you so much. One's in the chat. Love you all. I finally can't reply to every comment, which sucks, but I'm still trying to, and eventually I won't be able to do any of them. So have a good night, everybody. Thank you so much, and stay safe in this crazy America. Or in Europe, if you're there instead. But those are the only two